And we're just about to start the show here. Let's see, we're at 2:59. We're about to kick it in. Got a lot going on. Nancy Pelosi, we'll talk about that. What a big shockaroober that has been, and that's probably bigger to me than the Hunter Biden conviction. We'll talk about that as well. But this might be the terrible Tuesday for the Democratic Party to have Nancy Pelosi on tape making her admission. That's now all over the internet. And number two, Hunter Biden found guilty on all charges. It was so surprising that the Biden family wasn't even in the courtroom. We'll talk about it. Well, I don't know about you, but I remember as a kid, you would always ask for multiple presents at Christmas, probably thinking I'm not going to get everything I asked for, so I'm going to ask for several things, hopefully that maybe some of the things I'll get. Many of you guys are maybe old enough to remember the Sears and Roebuck catalogs and the J.C. Penney's, and how you would circle the things you wanted Santa to bring you. Your parents, of course, would do the investigation and seeing what they could afford, or maybe what you should have based on maybe your skill level in life. But have you ever sat there and said, wow, I got more than I expected? Today, we got more than we expected. We got the unbelievable quick verdict of guilty on Hunter Biden. As I was talking pre-show there, those of you just joined us with 96.9 FM here in Chattanooga, we're also being carried live by USAHeartbeat.com and StreetLevelAmerica.com that has the show now in 32 states, Mexico, and Canada. And we appreciate all those that like and share the show. We're also on Macil Duncan Radio that has us on the Rumble and the X channel, locals.com. And we're also on Facebook, True Social, Instagram. So appreciate all those that like and share the show and tell your friends. Well, as I was talking about this, I cannot believe Hunter Biden. The verdict was fast. It was so fast that Jill Biden and his sister, I think it's her name Abby, that they weren't even in the courtroom. The jury came back in, and many thought he might get convicted maybe on one or two, but they did not expect all three, and they did not expect it so quickly. And some of the folks felt like Jill Biden, trying to be high profile, sitting behind her son, was meant to kind of wow or shabam the jury into saying, wow, there's the first lady. We can't go against the first family, but they did. And he was found guilty on all three counts, and that was huge. But what I think was even bigger was the tape that's been released, Nancy Pelosi, saying I take full responsibility for January 6th, admitting in a limousine. I don't think she realized the recording would ever get to see the light of the day. She's talking panically to evidently her liaison there, and she's freaking out about January 6th and about the National Guard being denied, and she knows that was her call. So this was Nancy Pelosi 2 years ago, being a little coy with us about this January 6th committee.
Last month we passed our legislation for a select committee. The select committee is bipartisan, and it has a quorum, and it will do the job it sets out to do.
Now, don't forget, the Republicans had no choice on who represented them. They wanted Jim Jordan and some other, known conservatives on there. Oh, no, they only put Liz Cheney on there. So that's not bipartisan because, as you know, the Cheneys are not our friends in conservative land. Dick Cheney, the former senator and former vice president, literally shot somebody on a hunting trip. Faced no repercussions, but someone made him mad. He turned around and with a shotgun, he shot the guy. He didn't kill him. He shot in an area like his leg to wound him, but he point blank shot the guy out of anger. No consequences. So the rules for thee and not for me apply not just to upper level Democrats, but some upper level Republicans as well. So as you have Fancy Nancy, announcing this a little over 2 years ago, the January 6th committee, she was saying it kind of, and I'm going to just play that first 30 seconds again. If you watch it now, knowing what we know, she sounds very nervous. I want you to see if you pick up in her voice, Nancy Pelosi. She's not saying this like she's in the past. Nancy Pelosi can be very firm, very convincing. She sounds very iffy on this. Listen, if you can, closely.
Last month, we passed our legislation for a select committee. The select committee is bipartisan, and it has a quorum, and it will do the job it sets out to do.
Very choppy, very reluctant a little bit there. Well, this is Nancy Pelosi in the limousine. This, you've probably heard, it's been all over the internet today. I will play it twice. It is 40 seconds. Listen to this.
Responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
I take full responsibility. I'm going to play it again. She's talking to an assistant in the car. She has a mask on because that's back during the COVID, so it's a tad muffled. But you can tell this is not AI generated because if you watch the facial and the motions and stuff, she is very much in panic mode. Listen again and see if you can hear her saying, "It's my responsibility." This, my friends, just sunk the Democrats' battleship. All bets are off. Biden is done. Obama is done. Pelosi is done. Because they hung their hat on the January 6th witch hunt. Once this is out, everyone that's been convicted, in my opinion, needs to be released.
Have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability. Not have any accountability. Not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. On there, and we should have. There, and we should have. Should have. Should have.
There was no accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. Why would she say that? Because as Speaker of the House, it is your responsibility for the security. You have a special a police force, if you will, in the Capitol, but the Capitol Police and anything in the District of Columbia pretty much goes through the Speaker of the House. Even the mayor of D.C. and other things have direct correlation with the Speaker of the House. There are records where Donald Trump offered mayor and Speaker of the House, would you like to have National Guard there? And they all said no. So again, let's finish the rest of this. Nancy Pelosi admitting this was her responsibility.
This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with? National Guard there to begin with. Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility. They didn't know, and I take responsibility. And I take responsibility. And I take responsibility. And I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
Wow. Nancy Fancy Pelosi. Probably the biggest regret. Now, Daily Wire has unearthed January 6 footage shows Pelosi taking responsibility for not having authorities prepared for more. And because that was her job, as the memos will prove, Trump offered. Video from January 6, 2021, released by House Republicans on Monday, show then House Speaker Nancy Fancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, acknowledging that she is responsible for not ensuring that law enforcement and National Guard were prepared for more during the Capitol riot. In the newly released footage posted on X by the House Oversight Committee, Pelosi appears to be in the process of being evacuated from the U.S. Capitol as she rides in the back of a vehicle, much like a limousine, if you will, with staffers. Pelosi is seen discussing the riot that had broken out, expressing frustration that the National Guard wasn't there to begin with. Here is her quote that I played for you. "We have a responsibility," she says. Pelosi said, appearing to talk to her Chief of Staff, Terry McCullough. "We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have." Then Pelosi goes on to say, are you ready for this? "This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard?" Pelosi added. "Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?" McCullough began to answer, saying authorities thought we had a sufficient before Pelosi cut her off. And she is saying that that's not, she goes, no, it's not a question of how they had or they know. They clearly didn't know, Pelosi said, and I take responsibility for having them just prepare for more. Again, Pelosi said, I take responsibility for not having them just prepared for more. Now, the Blaze media has Nancy Pelosi panics when new January 6 footage shows her making damning admissions about the Capitol security and directly contradicts her blaming Donald Trump and the GOP. Representative Nancy Fancy Pelosi rushed to the safety of MSNBC after House Republicans released the damning video footage of former House Speaker taken on January 6, 2021, as she is fleeing to safety in her with her staff and her protection guard. On Monday, the House Administrative Oversight Committee released new footage January 6 showing Pelosi, then House Speaker, blaming herself for not having National Guard soldiers at the Capitol. And the key phrase that's lighting up the internet, I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more. So the video was taken by Pelosi's daughter, Alexandria Pelosi, and this was not supposed to be released. But like anything else, it's in the cloud, and once it's in the cloud, somebody good or bad can release it. So the video shows Pelosi speaking with her Chief of Staff, Terry McCullough, as she's being taken away from the Capitol in her private SUV with her entourage. So what say you, my friends? It's kind of like the lady that knew all along her husband was cheating, but I didn't have the evidence. Now you finally have the evidence. You're going, I'm going to get him. This right here proves what many suspected all along. It was a setup. Now, many thought that Pelosi was part of the setup. The other thing that's been leaking is General Silly the Millie's what I call him. General Milley, I named him Silly Milley because he's rather silly, because he's the one that admitted he would tell his Chinese counterpart if Donald Trump issued any kind of military action that would be an affront to China, meaning his loyalties were more with China than America. Milley, to me, is a traitor and should be treated as such. But with that said, Milley also went on, evidently in his last 2 weeks, to undermine Donald Trump's authority and pretty much took away his ability to communicate with the military and pretty much took away his command unknowing to Trump. And so more and more of that's coming out. So is Silly the Milley part of this as well? The one thing about the video, it makes Pelosi admit it's her responsibility, but maybe her frustration that she didn't know. Now, don't forget that Tucker Carlson had an interview with the Capitol Police Chief, whom they fired the next day. They would not allow him to testify before the January 6th committee. Just like they would not allow Donald Trump's limo driver testify before the January 6th committee to debunk he did not try to grab the wheel, as that little weasel girl said at the time, whom she's now recanted that story, but it was just trying to do damage. See, just like that Dr. Ford lady said all that stuff about Kavanaugh, saying he raped her back in high school and all those things, and then after none of it worked out, months later she said, oh, it wasn't true. Why is she not in jail? She tried to ruin the guy's life. This, my friends, is why many of us get appalled by these political, they're more than just political pundits, agitators. This is militant. This is an attempt to destroy America and destroy other people's lives. Well, this is the Patriot Pastor Macil Duncan. I'll be back after these messages.
Just how will Joe Biden pull out of the presidential race? Hello, I'm Steve Forbes, and this is What's Ahead, where you get the insights you need to navigate these turbulent times. President Biden's supercharged State of the Union address a few months ago quieted talk among Democrats about forcing him to drop his bid for a second term. But the quieting was only temporary. The continued, painfully obvious mental decline of our commander-in-chief has revived widespread public speculation of his withdrawing. A few observers think that this might be the political equivalent of a head fake, lowering expectations for his upcoming debate performance against Donald Trump. That highly anticipated verbal slugfest is barely 3 weeks away. After all, there are rumblings of pushing Biden out before his boffo State of the Union triumph. But the volume this time is more extensive and the tone more anxious. The fact that several Democrats, almost always off the record, are whispering concerns to the media reveals growing worries about this president's fitness to stay the course for this campaign. Hardly anyone believes he can navigate the rigors of a second term. This, of course, leads to basic questions. Will Biden bow out before the June 27 debate with Trump? Unlike his appearances these days, the president won't be aided by teleprompters. His unscripted remarks are routinely and embarrassingly confused and garbled. Would a combination of anger, which might fuel a temporary clarity of mind, extensive rehearsals, and some exotic elixirs enable Biden to complete a 90-minute debate, especially since the likely moderators would be on his side and former President Trump might overplay his hand? Perhaps this is what certain White House aides and the powerful, highly influential First Lady are counting on. It's a high risk, however. A fumbling performance would make a subsequent pullout particularly humiliating. Even if Biden makes it through the June 27 challenge, his continuing decline in public and private meetings will fire up ever-deepening misgivings among voters, knowing a ballot cast for Biden would be a ballot cast for Kamala Harris, sooner rather than later for her to sit in the Oval Office. When Biden steps down, who would replace him and how? He would likely quit the campaign, but not the presidency. Harris would remain vice president. Fevered meetings would follow among Democrats as party leaders would try to orchestrate the anointment of a candidate the way they did in 2020 with Joe Biden to block frontrunner Bernie Sanders. The frontrunner here would be California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's never made secret his lust for the nation's top job. But Democrats may conclude his record makes him too vulnerable, and instead would go for an unknown candidate with a cleaner slate, particularly one of their governors, like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Wesley Moore of Maryland, or Jared Polis of Colorado. A big international financial or military crisis may force Biden out, as he does not have the mental agility to handle such a situation the way John Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kamala Harris may yet get to sit in the big chair. Either way, Joe Biden will not be the head of the Democratic ticket this November. I'm Steve Forbes. Thanks for listening. Do send in your comments and suggestions, and I look forward to being with you soon again.
So that's Steve Forbes. I don't know what you think about that. I found it very intriguing that he would find the possibility, and many are talking more about it, that Joe Biden will not be the official nominee, and that's why they've pushed the Democratic convention back to the 1st of August, which is very late for a Democratic convention. Now, the first presidential debate, I think, will be the tell-all here in June when Donald Trump and Joe Biden, because they've already got him sitting down. Okay, he doesn't have to stand. They've already got no audience, so there's no clapping or any noises that can distract him. So he won't have any excuse if he can't go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, even though it's CNN. Donald Trump's walking into a very left-leaning situation. If Biden looks weak, if you've seen the movie Dave, where he pretends to be the president, and at the end when he pretends to have the aneurysm and falls down, etc., you guys have seen the movie. If you haven't, it's a great drama. Kind of tells you a little bit about how they inflate the budget. He goes in and he decreases the budget using common sense. It's really a great story line. But you can see where maybe Joe or whoever's handling Joe, because there's a lot of doubt that's really Joe Biden. I've seen the pictures of the ears. I've seen the pictures of the eyebrows and the hairlines. Don't know. I don't know. And Joe Biden, definitely, when you look at senator clips, his fiery speeches of the past and his timid speeches of the present, it does make you doubt, is that really the guy? Well, you can't now talk about the Bidens now without talking about the son. Hunter Biden is now officially a convicted felon.
Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all 3 felony charges related to a 2018 gun purchase. Jurors found him guilty of lying to a federally licensed gun dealer, making a false claim on an application by stating he was not a drug user and possessing the gun illegally for 11 days. He faces up to 25 years in prison. However, first-time offenders rarely receive the maximum sentence, and it's unclear if he'll serve any time behind bars. Joe Biden has remained distant from the federal courtroom and has stated he will not seek to pardon his son.
Now that's CBN News reporting there, and we'll be interested to see how this plays out. But Hunter Biden has been found guilty, and as you know, of the gun charges, and so there's a lot of speculation how this will proceed further. He will have sentencing, I think, in 20 days, but he also has an IRS, an IRS court date, so where he's going to have to wait and see if he's going to have any further charges brought to him against the IRS. Now, if that's the case, that could be very damning as well, and could take some time away from Joe Biden's and the family, the campaign trail, because when you have him facing the IRS as well as these cases, it's just rather different. There's also been a new release here. I don't know if you've heard this. I just got this. There's a new news release here about Hunter Biden. Let's play the clip.
The Secret Service was investigating the shocking discovery of cocaine just steps from the Oval Office. Conservative media is pointing the finger at the president's troubled son, Hunter.
This was all unfolding in between visits from the president's son, Hunter, a recovering drug addict.
You can tour the White House if you give him an ounce of cocaine. But it got shut down when somebody found his cocaine.
Secret Service evacuated parts of the White House yesterday.
Hunter likes cocaine.
You identified Hunter Biden was paying prostitutes related to a potential prostitution ring. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Yes, that's correct.
They won't prosecute when he buys prostitutes and cocaine.
The D.C. Fire Department confirmed it was cocaine.
When they impeach Trump, nights with a bump of cocaine.
Hunter Biden had written off payments to prostitutes.
Hunter likes cocaine.
There were deductions for what we believe to be escorts, and then that $10,000 golf club membership that was for a sex club.
His computer got pawned while he was high on cocaine. He said it was hacked, but he sold it for crack cocaine.
Dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use.
Hunter likes cocaine.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it.
While Joe sniffs minors, Hunter is snorting liners of cocaine. He snorted his brother's ashes. He thought it was a stash of cocaine.
Talking about my son, Bo Biden, you're talking about me.
I don't know, Bo.
Hunter likes cocaine.
Hunter Biden is a degenerate and drug user. His own father was the man in the U.S. Senate for over a decade pushing for stronger penalties for crack cocaine users.
And that is the truth about the cocaine and the Biden family. Do you remember when it was found in the White House and it mysteriously just went kapooey? Dan Bongino, who used to work for the Secret Service, said there's more cameras in the White House than any other building ever. He goes, they know who had the cocaine. There's no doubt they know whose it was, even without the fingerprints, with the camera angles and all the security that place has. And for the Secret Service to come out and say, oh, they've lost it, they don't know whose it was. You can tell they have done everything to try to protect this family. They have gone out on ledges. Secret Service actually were sent to the gun owner's shop to try to retrieve his actual application. What got Hunter Biden so in trouble is when he checked on the gun application that he was not addicted to drugs. The application says, are you involved with drug usage and do you have any addiction problems? He checked no, and he had a past and he'd been in multiple treatment centers, so that was lying on a federal gun application. Okay, so some folks said, well, they're concerned about the Hunter Biden guilty verdict is this could be a setup that the left can use to go after stricter gun laws and come after law-abiding citizens, trying to impugn more laws and questions, if you will, to where you self-incriminate yourself. Some people felt like, hey, he shouldn't have to answer such a question. That's private business. Don't know. See, it's a lot of opinion out there. But the Biden family, make no mistake, has got a situation here, and a lot of folks are right now, I think, having no sympathies. Like you would think. The jury, 3 hours, made a decision. As I mentioned earlier, Jill Biden and the family were not even in the courtroom. They thought it would take much longer. So when the jury came back and the verdict was read, Jill Biden was actually walking in the courtroom because they just had no idea it would be that fast. So that tells you again the people. Now, 84%. Steve Bannon released a poll yesterday. 84%. This was by TrueGov.com. Did a survey. 84% of voting Americans said they do not want to see a Biden second term. Now, that's, of course, Republicans, independents, and some Democrats. 84% of voters. That's a huge, huge part. So will the Democrats, and I just played for you the Steve Forbes prediction and many others, will they replace Joe Biden? Now, the big rumor was, it'll be Michelle Obama. Well, Michelle Obama has come out several times saying that she's not interested. But think about it. If you're up there at the Democratic National Convention, and unlike the Republicans, the Democrats can make a nomination. they've got 250 of what they call super delegates. And those super delegates don't have to affirm the people's choice. When you did all these primaries and the voting to get Joe Biden the nomination, it's more of like a suggestion to Democrats. Democrats completely control who they elect. They proved that with Hillary Clinton. There's no doubt that Bernie Sanders in 2015, going into 2016, he had the nomination. He had the people, he had the votes, he had the numbers. Hillary couldn't draw a crowd, much like Biden. So Bernie Sanders was robbed. And so that's one reason Tulsi Gabbard left. She was the vice president of the Democratic Party. She left the Democratic Party and said, listen, I can't be a part of this. You stole the election, the nomination from Bernie Sanders, and which put her at odds with Hillary, the Hillary. The sad thing is Tulsi Gabbard was one of the rising stars for the Democrats. When they lost Tulsi, that's when they went after AOC. AOC, the bartender, just hasn't measured up to Tulsi. Tulsi is a much smarter. Tulsi has served in the military. AOC serves liquor. There's a little difference, okay? So when you look at where the Democrat Party has gone, they've lost a very viable, I think, a very viable person in her. And then don't forget all the folks that have left the Democratic Party now and have gone independent. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard. You have Kristen Sinema, the senator in Arizona, who is not running for re-election. You have the senator in West Virginia, Joe Manchin, who is not running for re-election. Now, ask yourself this. Now, Tulsi Gabbard was Congress, but 2 senators said they're not running for re-election. And why would Joe Manchin do it now? He could have just stayed a Democrat through the end of this term and at 2024 rode off into the sunset and said, hurrah. But no, for some reason, Joe Manchin felt a need now to declare himself an independent right before the primaries. Now, there's 3 thoughts. One, he could run for governor as an independent because being an independent candidate, he doesn't have to seek the endorsement of his party. Secondly, he could run as an independent candidate for senator and then split the vote 3 ways, and that may be a way for him to keep his seat, much like Joseph Lieberman did. Back when he was the Democrat, the Democrats forced him out in the primaries, and he felt they stole it. So he ran as an independent and beat that guy that they tried to put up against him, and it allowed him to have great leverage. And he actually became a partner with Bush in his administration and spoke at the GOP National Convention. Do you remember those days? So there's something about Democrats that go independent. And if they do it in a friendly manner, they can be welcomed into the opposing party. Joe Manchin is the one guy back when Joe Biden first took office. It was Joe Manchin. There was talk, who's running the country? Which Joe? Joe Manchin, because they had a 1-vote majority in the Senate, would continually hold out until he got what he wanted. Do you guys remember that? So Joe Manchin has positioned himself, I think, in a good way with the independents and in the left-leaning Republicans. Even our leader, if you want to call it Mitch McConnell, has said, why don't you just come on over to the Republican Party? So it's interesting, the timing, my friend, the timing. Why would Joe Manchin become an independent now, just a couple of weeks ago? Maybe he sees the writing on the wall that the Democrat Party maybe issued a death blow here in the next little bit. Because if you can release a tape that damning on Nancy Pelosi, and we'll play it again here in a minute, admitting January 6th was her fault and her responsibility. Her words, not mine. So for Nancy Pelosi to say that, and her own daughter was videotaping this in the back of the car as they were leaving, and it was part of her entourage, leaving January 6th. So you got that. You got the Hunter Biden conviction. And for some reason, the media is kind of turning on Joe Biden. They're not protecting him. That's not normal. Usually, the Democrats have unfeathered access and protection. If Republicans trip or pick their nose in public. It's major headline news. But they're catching all of Biden's gaffes, his trips, his failures, his misfortunes. And so it seems to me, and Benny Johnson said this. Benny had a good podcast on that this morning. He says it seems to him that they have turned on the Bidens, and that Joe Biden evidently has been asked possibly to step down and not run again, but because he would not, don't know. And maybe that's a Dr. Jill question, because she enjoys the power. Maybe that's when they said, listen, we're going to turn on you, because here's the thing about the Hunter Biden trial, if you didn't know this. Exhibit 16. You're saying, what is that? Well, when you are in a court of law and you're being prosecuted, especially by the federal government, they bring evidence, item number 1, item number 2. Well, guess what item number 16 was? Item number 16 was brought in a sealed, clear bag. Hunter Biden's laptop. That, my friend, I think was a huge shot to the Bidens. Not only did they completely, they brought a flawless case. They brought up all kind of witnesses. Hunter, there is no wiggle room. Hunter he's at the mercy of the court. But not only that, remember when they had the 50 intelligence people say that the Hunter Biden laptop was nothing but a conspiracy theory by the Russians back when Trump was running 2020. Do you remember that? The FBI, and maybe the FBI is trying to get some restoration in the public eye. I will give the FBI an applaud and a pastor salute for what they did. The FBI went in and they said, this is Hunter Biden's laptop. It has absolutely unfettered access. It has no access to the Russians. This is completely his laptop with only his information on it, and they put their reputation and guaranteed it. What does that do? Well, one, it calls all those 50 intelligence agencies, the James Comey and all the former FBI director, liars, because they knew it was Hunter Biden's laptop. The second thing it does, it now enters into evidence in a federal court, Hunter Biden's laptop, filled with pedophilia, filled with drug conviction issues, probably filled with even more damning evidence for his IRS and deal with their illegal business dealings abroad. Savvy? So that's huge, my friends. So evidence item number 16, and the reason they brought it in a sealed bag is because it still has the cocaine residue fingerprints. Hunter was using it while he was freaking high on his cocaine. And by doing that, he left residue fingerprints on the keyboard and on parts of the laptop, and they wanted all that pristine available for review. That, my friend, could be the death knell of the Biden campaign. Even if he gets off on the IRS, which I doubt he will, the laptop, item number 16. Very damning, very, very damning, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that, because if Hunter Biden is not only found guilty, but Hunter Biden has to do serious time, jail time. His father has said he won't pardon him, but one thing he could do is commute his sentence. I don't know if you know what that is. That means he doesn't remove the guilt, but he doesn't make him spend time in prison. He commutes his sentence and says, hey, he's got to go give 100 donuts a day to homeless people or something. And that's where a lot of folks think he'll do. If Joe Biden loses to Donald Trump in November, don't forget he'll have the rest of November and December, and he'll probably start pardoning everybody under the sun. Think about that. And because the Bidens have flip-flopped so much, I don't think Hunter's going to spend a day in jail. I really don't. And I've said this on the record, I'll say it again. If his name wasn't Biden, I don't think this case would have been brought. But right now, what we have in our federal government, we have an impasse. We have the GOP and the DNC and their financial backers and their power brokers battling right now. They're just right now looking at, who can outjust the other. And I think what's going to happen, and I could be wrong, I don't think Donald Trump will do any time. Joe Manchin, that's one thing he said the other day. He is currently the senator from West Virginia, but the former Democrat. He says, I can't see that Donald Trump will do any time. Now, I realize that the state Democrats, the state Congress there, they're trying to pass a law in New York that if you spend time in Rikers prison and you are a formerly Secret Service protected person, such as a president, secretary of state or something, you lose all Secret Service protection. And that if you go to prison, then you are at the mercy of the guards of the prison. That sounds a little intentional. But again, as you just look at this, I just don't see that the Democrats are losing big. Now, they're crazy enough maybe to want Trump thrown in prison without Secret Service protection, seeing if they could have him murdered, because that's probably the only way they beat him. At this point, Donald Trump is up in every state, every swing state. He was tied yesterday in Virginia, but many feel that that's going to be changing. The health of the president is very bad, and it's very sad. But again, I go back to that. I believe this first debate will be crucial. When Donald Trump and Joe Biden go mano a mano, I just don't see how he's going to be able to overcome that. I could be wrong, but I just don't see how he's going to be able to overcome that and make up ground, because I think Donald Trump is firing on all cylinders. He's pretty upset because of the crap they've put him through, the money they've cost him. He's not going to take any prisoners. What he did last time, he had mercy. He even said he didn't want to go after Hillary Clinton, some of them, because he said, hey, I won the presidency. He just wanted to focus on the country. Now, a lot of folks have said, well, what would he do if he gets in this time? Will he have any revenge motivation? And I've got to tell you this, not that you want revenge, but these folks, it's not so much Donald Trump. They hate America. These people that break the law and are hell-bent on doing whatever it takes to get their agenda done, they need to go. I have no problem with him, and I hope he gets Ken Paxton from Texas and say, Ken, I'd like you to be my attorney general, and I want you to unturn every stone, Democrat, Republican, Scooby-Doo party, independent, whoever. Find the bad guys and go after them, and we'll see what happens. Well, Trump won a lot of people in Las Vegas when he promises tax-free tips. Now, you got to think about all the people in Las Vegas, all the folks that work in all these different hotels and casinos. This could be huge when it comes to voter turnout. See what you think.
Donald Trump visited Las Vegas on Sunday and offered a huge gratuity to the estimated 260,000 hotel and food service workers here and millions more across the country who count on customer tips. Return me to office, the former president said, and your tip income won't be taxed. The declaration drew a roar from the gathering, which vastly exceeded the reported 6,000 tickets issued. In July, Nevada's minimum wage for tipped employees will rise to $4.35 an hour, but employers will still be required to make sure those workers earn at least $9.50 an hour. Trump made his promise at an outdoor rally in the city's Sunset Park, attended by supporters who braved 100-degree temperatures and a blazing sun to see their candidate for the White House. The announcement was apparently a drop-in to the former president's campaign stump speech, in which he excoriated crooked Joe Biden's recent immigration executive order, which supposedly closes the southern border if certain criteria are met, as BS. The crowd started chanting the full word for a minute or so. Trump was jovial with the crowd, asking, "It's not too hot out here, is it?" They were so worried that we issued a warning, "Don't come," so only 20,000 showed up, quipped the ex-pres. That number could not be independently verified, however. Before the rally, several Trump backers expressed steadfast support for their candidate, suggesting a possible flip of Nevada, which backed Joe Biden 4 years ago.
That would be the interesting thing. Donald Trump is making ground. Now, I had a special guest on yesterday, Ankus, who is from New Jersey, and he is a guy from India going through all the legal process to become a legal citizen here in America. And he's been at it almost 6 years now, I guess, and pays his taxes, etc. But he is a big Trump supporter. And he'll tell you, as someone that's come from another country, he believes in capitalism. He believes in our Constitution. Because he's trying to become a legal citizen, he's had to actually study the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and what it means to be an American. And he says he loves what this country stands for. And I personally wish that the Republicans would guarantee immediate citizenship for folks that have been waiting 2 to 5 years and have gone through the courses and etc. I don't realize the pause. They should automatically be made citizens. That's just my opinion. One thing that the GOP needs to consider, the thing that made them so attractive back when Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House, was a thing called Contract with America. That's when the GOP, which is very rare, laid out a long-term plan, and they called it Contract with America. Basically saying, if you put us in power, this is a contract. We promise to provide this. Donald Trump, when he ran in 2016, kind of offered a contract with America, basically saying, if you put me in office, one of the things he promised to do was pick federal judges, Supreme Court, off a list of 25. He went ahead and vetted 25 judges, and before the campaign, and said, I promise I will pick from these people. And he kept his promise. Now, a lot of people were trying to say he would pick his sister. You know, his sister was a federal judge who's passed away now, and he's lost a brother, God rest their souls. So he wanted to put that rumor to rest, that he would not put his own sister on the Supreme Court. Of course, she was getting up there in age. It would not have been a good choice. If you want to put someone on the Supreme Court, what you really want to do is put someone on there that's got some years. You know, Amy Coney Barrett. You know, the ones he put on, they're going to be there for quite some time, and it keeps that viewpoint, be it conservative or liberalism, whichever your view is, keeps the court at least more on that track, and that's the goal. Okay, well, got a couple of things here for you. Let's see. We've talked a lot about, take it off that. I don't know if you heard about these stabbings, but this was a little disturbing. 4 American college instructors brutally stabbed while in China. This is very disappointing. 4 instructors with ties to Iowa College were stabbed in China on Monday. Their injuries were described as not life-threatening. The 4 Americans from Cornell College, which has no connection to Cornell University in New York State, were attacked about noon while touring a part of China in the northern part of the country, and horrified that multiple Cornell College facility members were brutally stabbed in China. My team has been communication with the college and do everything in our power to bring these lawmen home safely. Join me in praying for them and their health and safety, Republican Ashley Hinton from Iowa put out in her X account. So, Ashley, thanks for letting us know about this. I don't know any other media is covering this, but 4 American college instructors were stabbed in China while taking a tour in the northern country. So you might tell yourself, well, if I go to China, which I don't think I would go, let's not go to the northern country unless we have armed escort, something to keep in mind. But we'll see. Let's see. Here's another one. This is the Federalist. They're very, very right-leaning. so I like to sometimes hear what they said. But they say an exclusive House Republicans demand a briefing on the CIA interference in the Biden probe. Now, this is interesting because many of us believe that the CIA does manipulate elections abroad and ours here at home, and they have a lot of unfettered access to us as citizens and to other people. House Republicans are demanding a briefing from the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, don't forget, one of the first things Donald Trump did was he sent his guy to be over the CIA. Then he put him over as Secretary of State. Don't forget that guy. I'm not going to mention his name because I'm mad at him right now because I think he's not supported Donald Trump. But Donald Trump put him in a very lofty opportunity, and he could have been a good VP, but he's on my bad list. Anyway, but that was one of the first things Trump did was go in and clean up the CIA. If you remember that, he appointed him CIA director and said, go in and clean that mess up. He's probably going to have to do that again. The sad thing is, I think the CIA corrupted that guy, whoever he puts to go in there. And don't forget, when Kennedy was shot in Dallas, who was the CIA director at the time? Anybody? He stood with his arms folded while everyone else was running for cover. He's in pictures with his arms folded as if he knew the shots were coming. Mr. Bush Sr., the president, was the CIA director and didn't look scared at all when everyone else was running for cover as Kennedy was shot. Interesting. So the CIA, it's no big shockaroo to you that they have a lot of access. They have a lot of things. And if you want to go back and do a research, FDR, the only guy to be elected to 3 terms, and it's because of that power grab the Democrats had. If you know, that's why they went and made an amendment to only 2 terms for president. But FDR, even though his 3rd term, he didn't complete it because his polio had kicked in and television wasn't around at that time, so the nation didn't see his failing health, or he probably would not have gotten a 3rd term. They would have seen him to be what we're seeing out of Biden. But FDR, under him, 20 government agencies were launched. I want you to go and look those up. You can go to Wikipedia. One of them is the CIA. Under a 12-year Democratic power of D.C., they launched 20 federal agencies. And I think the one that's done us the most damage is the CIA over this time. So House Republicans are demanding a brief from the Central Intelligence Agency over the CIA's alleged interference with the investigation related to President Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. On Tuesday, the chairman of the House of Oversight and Judiciary Committee sent a letter to the CIA Director William Burns requesting a staff-level briefing by agency personnel to explain previous denials that the CIA interfered to block an interview of Biden associate Patrick Kevin Morris. The letters was followed up to one sent in March seeking records related to the allegations from the federal whistleblower who claimed the CIA blocked the interview of Morris. Without confirming or denying the existence of any associate or communications, CIA did not prevent or seek to prevent IRS or DOJ from conducting any such interview, wrote the CIA Director of Congressional Affairs, James Catella. This was April 4th. The allegation, he said, is false. On Tuesday, however, the lawmakers highlighted testimony from Internal Revenue Service whistleblower Gary Shapley, who said the efforts to interview Morris as part of a federal tax investigation were blocked by the Justice Department. Shapley claimed investigators could no longer pursue him as a witness after DOJ staff were summoned to the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia to discuss Morris. Notably, Mr. Shapley stated that it's unclear how the CIA became aware that Mr. Morris was a political witness in the Hunter Biden investigation, wrote Chairman James Comer of Kentucky. Subsequent meetings between the staff of Judiciary Committee and the CIA Office of Congressional Affairs in April failed to collaborate Catell's denials of agency interference, according to a letter Tuesday. So, to date, the CIA has failed to supplement its response or provide any documents response to the committee. This is a March 21st letter, and the lawmakers wrote it sums SSA Shapley's affidavit and the supporting documentation present clear contemporaneous evidence that Mr. Catell's assertion in his April 4th letter to the committees was potentially false and or misleading. Bottom line is it's a lot of shake and bake, and he said, she said, and they're not wanting to come together. So this is the Federalist. You can go read. It's quite lengthy, but it's asking why the CIA is throwing up such a defense for the Biden regime and hindering investigations within the other federal agencies, IRS, FBI, etc. Good, who knows? Who knows? I don't think anyone is going to sit around and say, hey, I think the Bidens are clean as a whistle. I doubt that. Well, if any Michigan fans out there, I don't know if anyone's out there a big Michigan fan. I think they're going to miss Jim Harbaugh this year. I know the new coach coming in, much like Alabama, has all the hopes in the world, but two legends, Saban and Harbaugh, are gone. But here's the thing about Michigan football that's very, it's not so much football, it's the university. Michigan University spent $100,000 to celebrate new DEI initiative. That included espresso bar and hip-hop performance. Check this out. The University of Michigan spent about $100,000 celebrating its DEI 2.0 plan, which included an espresso bar, hip-hop performance, and a lecture connecting critical race theory and the hip-hop. The event took place October 2023, but the details were provided to the college fix via public records request last month, which reported the findings last week. The university's public affairs department announced the event, which is the annual DEI summit, saying it would celebrate the 50th anniversary of the hip-hop highlight and its intersection with the critical race theory, celebrating and exploring the power of storytelling as driving force for social change. So if you are a big DEI person, you may think this is wonderful. I, for one, think it's a waste of money, and $100,000 that could be spent on so many other things. The university's DEI efforts far-reaching in ways appropriate to the size, scope, and complexity of the university, spanning across 51 units of the university and serving functions that support over 50,000 students and over 50,000 employees, she added. Now that's, I wonder if that's a misprint. That's, is that an employee per student? 50,000 students and 50,000 employees. Interesting. As the fix noted, the university spent $60,000 on its two keynote speakers, paying hip-hop artist, producer, and activist David Banner $25,000 for a 10-minute speech. $25,000 for a 10-minute speech. Well, shabammer. And his participation in a 45-minute moderated roundtable discussion. Hip-hop artist Raz Bodie, R-A-P-S-O-D-Y, was paid $35,000 for a musical performance and her participation in the roundtable discussion. So the contracts of each included first-class air travel, coach tickets, traveling companions, along with the lodging and two-night stay and all their expenses. Well, good for them. You know, when you have conferences, you bring in people that you think will ignite and excite the people coming. I don't have a problem with that. It's just I'm just not a big DEI fan. If it was to the actual statement, it's kind of like Black Lives Matter. I agree with that 100%, that statement. Black lives do matter. But the politics behind the organization, I disagree with. The bully concepts and the deception concepts. And when you went to Black Lives Matter fundraising in its first 13 months, most of the money, the top 12 recipients, 8 of them were white. You'll do the research yourself. And the top 6 were white. And I thought it was Black Lives Matter, not these 6 Democrats that were raising money. And then down the line, there were 2 Republicans. And why were they getting all the money? I thought it was supposed to go to black people. That's the kind of stuff that a statement or a title sometimes sounds good. But when you deep dive into what's below it, then you kind of, that's not something I want to be a part of. And I think that's the case. Well, we're coming up on the 4 o'clock break, and we've got a news break for you as we come to that. I've already played for you the Biden will drop out of the race by Steve Forbes, and that was a powerful statement. But this one is nearly 2/3 of the middle class say they are struggling financially. It's a new poll that's out, and I don't know where you are financially, but I do know this. We have an Appleton food pantry that feeds over 3,000 people a month. We could use your prayers in these troublesome times. Our clients are increasing. Could you make a donation today on www.apposonbaptist.com? I repeat, www.apposonbaptist.com. Food drives, prayers, financial donations help us feed the hungry. We rent out 2 old grocery stores, and we're open 7 days a week. But donations are what keeps the lights on and helps us buy food and meet the needs of many. We are currently serving over 1,500 family units one time a month. Many of them we feed weekly, but just being fair, we count them one time a month. If you take 1,500 family units and average 3 per family, that's well over 3,000 people we are feeding. So your kind donations are appreciated. Now, this commercial was heard by a Food City employee on the other side of town. And I got a call, and they filled up my truck twice and told me, we've got $2,600 in discretionary funds, and we want to help your pantry even further. Pastor, salute to those that listen and say, I want to help feed the hungry. We appreciate that so much. Don't forget Metro Tab Church off Highway 153 in Chattanooga has a multicultural church experience with media, worship, and preaching that punches a hole in hell. Dr. Steve Ball is the pastor, and you can go live every Sunday and watch Dr. Steve Ball and his worship team, or you can listen on 96.9 FM every Sunday at 10:30 as Metro Tab's worship service is broadcast live on this very station. I'll be back after the news break.
The economy is a top issue for American voters, and the sentiment from the middle class is it's not doing well, according to the latest polling. About 2/3 of Americans considered middle class say they're facing economic hardship and don't expect that to change for the remainder of their lives. That's people making $60,000 for a family of 4, which is 200% the federal poverty level. But even for higher income Americans, people making more than $150,000 for a family of 4 or 5 times the federal poverty level, a quarter of these earners say they also worry about paying their bills. Overall, regardless of income level, 60% of respondents say they are financially struggling, which coincides with 62% of Americans saying inflation is a big problem in a recent Pew Research poll. The negative sentiment found in this latest poll was evident in even more stats. 40% live paycheck to paycheck. 46% don't have $500 in the bank. A recent Gallup poll shows 46% of Americans view the economy as poor. 56% believe the country is in a recession in the latest Harris poll. But this feeling on how the economy is doing differs from some economic reports showing positive growth in the U.S. economy.
So you can see every quarter we've had reasonably strong economic growth. So why people feel this is really quite a mystery.
Sentiment poll after sentiment poll has told us that people really don't like this economy. They really don't feel good about this economy. This is a real danger for an incumbent trying to seek re-election. And every sort of poll says that Biden doesn't get credit for the fact that, we have a stock market that's a record high.
The economy and the contrast in feelings toward it is also captured when comparing campaign ads of Biden and Trump's.
Today, we have the strongest economy in the world.
All of the things that Biden fought to get passed help the middle class. Wages are going up around here. I feel like Joe Biden understands people like me.
Over 12 million jobs have been created, and Joe Biden's building an economy that leaves no city, no town, no American behind.
Not one thing is cheaper under Crooked Joe's: food, gasoline, cars, trucks, rent, and mortgages. They're all through the roof.
Joe Biden has set a lot of records, like 40-year record high inflation.
Are you better off now than you were in January of 2021?
No, I'm not. I mean, that's me being honest. I'm working 5 times harder.
How well the economy is doing is often a numbers game. And depending on how one interprets the data, there's often very different conclusions.
And that seems to be the case, depending on where people are at. Don't tell me the economy's doing great if I'm having to work side jobs and I can't pay all my bills. So it sounds like the rich are doing well, but the middle class and below, not so much. Have you tried to look at house prices lately, or look at vehicle prices, or just every average day living? People that try to act like things are fine. I was in the grocery store today. A dozen eggs at Publix, $6.99. $7 for a dozen eggs? I don't think so, Mr. Joe. I think a lot of folks are going to say I don't think so as well, as they start coming close to the election. Well, we talked about this in the last hour. The biggest gift that now has been given, many feel, is Nancy Pelosi and her admitting that the January 6th debacle was her fault. Now, again, this was January 6th announcement of the committee. Nancy the Fancy Pelosi, if you can, listen to her timidness, and I think we now understand why, as she was appointing this committee. And the only Republican she put on there was Liz the Cheney. And Liz Cheney set a record, as you know, in her re-election bid back in 2020. She got the lowest turnout ever. They actually asked Democrats to go vote for her just so it wouldn't be so bad. She got beat by nearly 47% for an incumbent. Never, ever has that happened. Liz Cheney is a traitor. She's a turncoat. And none of us in the conservative movement consider her anything less than nothing but a turncoat. And what she did and tried to do off her daddy's coattails, sorry. They worship the military complex. She is getting paid by the same people that pay Nikki Haley, the Boeing and the military complex folks, and they don't speak for Middle America and for average everyday Americans. They're part of the elitist group. But here is Nancy Fancy trying to explain her picking this group, this January 6th Select Committee.
Last month we passed our legislation for a select committee. The select committee is bipartisan, and it has a quorum, and it will do the job it sets out to do.
So that was Nancy Pelosi a little over 2 years ago, and Fancy Nancy was trying to obviously cover up a mess. And the New York Post,
Freddy's Pretzel Bacon Barbecue Steak Burger,
are releasing this. It's 40 seconds, but it's very damning of the Pelosi's. Her daughter actually took this footage, and it got leaked by the committee that's overseeing this. And even though she won't give them information, she can't refute this. This is Nancy Pelosi saying, I have responsibility for not calling the National Guard, basically calling it my bad.
Have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility. Didn't know, and I take responsibility. And I take responsibility. And I take responsibility. And I take responsibility for not having them. Just prepare for more.
Now, as you start understanding this, don't forget there's a leaked interview between ex-Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund and former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Revealed that Sund, who was the Capitol Police Chief, fired the day after January 6th because he was furious. And this is what he said. He believed that the officials were aware of January 6th Capitol insurrection before it happened and covered it up. Right-wing news company, the National Pulse, leaked the interview, which was never aired by Fox. So the Capitol Police Chief, Stephen Sund, was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Many feel that was the breaking straw of why Fox News fired Tucker Carlson. They kept the original interview copy and would not let Tucker have it. So when Tucker started his new media company, one of the first people he re-interviewed was Police Chief Sund. Please go online and watch it. It's about a 55 to an hour interview filled with all of his fact jacks. He explains how he called and asked for backup, and they would not come. He called the Capitol. He called the National Guard. He was calling everybody and saying, hey, we need help. But they did not want to send help. They wanted this thing to look bad. And the other thing we're finding out, and I hope we find out more, is that the congressman from Texas believes there was 200 FBI agents or more in the crowd pretending to be Trump people, stirring up and agitating the crowd. One that we all know by name is Ray Epps. Ray Epps was on video January 5th, the night before, going into the different Trump people out there, kind of rallying and praying and talking before the January 6th. And he was telling folks, we need to charge the Capitol. We need to charge the Capitol. And you can hear them chanting, Fed, 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 basically saying they knew he was a plant. So he wasn't very convincing on the 5th. So he did not go to Donald Trump's speech on January 6th. He sat outside the Capitol. Video evidence proves this. And what he kept doing is anyone walking by, he says, we need to go into the Capitol. Well, then as people were leaving Trump's speech, he was part of those wearing a Trump hat and Trump paraphernalia, pointing and telling people to go into the Capitol. Now, Ray Epps was finally brought in for questioning, but no charges. He was because he's got a tie with the FBI and the group doing this, no doubt. So it's something for you to consider. So with that said, Donald Trump had a statement about this. Trump calls for the January 6th committee members to be indicted. See what you think.
Donald Trump is calling for the criminal prosecution of members of the Congressional January 6th Investigative Committee, all of whom are his political opponents. In a post on Truth Social, the former president wrote, "Indict the unselect J6 committee for illegally deleting and destroying all of their findings." Committee members included Republicans Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, and Democrats Adam Schiff, Jamie Raskin, Benny Thompson, and others. Trump made the post after his former chief strategist Steve Bannon was sentenced to 4 months in prison for defying a subpoena from the committee. Bannon remained defiant after he was handed the sentence Thursday and ordered to surrender by July 1st.
There's not a prison built. There's not a prison built or a jail built that will ever shut me up. All victory to MAGA. We're going to win this. We're going to win at the Supreme Court. And more importantly, we're going to win on November 5th in an amazing landslide.
Trump added in his Truth Social post, "It is a total and complete American tragedy that the crooked Joe Biden Department of Injustice is so desperate to jail Steve Bannon, and every other Republican for that matter, for not submitting to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs." Congressman Barry Loudermilk spearheaded a Republican-led investigation into what happened on January 6, 2021, and wrote in his report that some of the evidence from the original Select Committee was not preserved. Committee member Zoe Lofgren responded to Trump's calls for their indictment and denied deleting evidence.
The ex-president is threatening to arrest people shows he does not understand or does not care about our system of justice.
The committee concluded its investigation with an 845-page report and a criminal referral against Trump to the Justice Department. They suggested Trump be indicted on charges very similar to those brought forward by Special Counsel Jack Smith. For more stories on Trump and...
So that was their committee, but this was actually Nancy Pelosi on January 6th.
Responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
No, that is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
So Nancy Pelosi in a tape with her security guards, an entourage, saying in a panic on January 6th as she's being whisked away, I take responsibility for January 6th. I don't know what you all think, but I think that's pretty damning for her, and I don't know how she gets out of this one. I'm sure there will be an attempt, but I think her goose is cooked, in my opinion. We'll go to a commercial break here, and what about hunger? Can you do something about hunger?
You hear in the news every day that people are dying of hunger around the world, and you probably think the situation is pretty dire. And it is. But you are the first generation in history with the opportunity to solve hunger. You are the Zero Hunger Generation. For the third year in a row, hunger is on the rise. 821 million people don't know where their next meal is coming from. Half of these hungry people are in the business of growing food. They're small-scale farmers who grow just enough to feed their families and hope to have a little left to sell. There are also hungry people living in urban centers or who have been displaced by natural disaster or conflict. To understand why so many people in a world of abundance go to bed hungry, you have to look at the 4 factors that influence food security. Food availability can be affected by things like extreme weather, improper storage, pests and diseases, or the economy. It only takes one of these events, and suddenly, there's not enough food locally available. To ensure that people don't go hungry, we have to do more than just grow food. We've got to move it closer to where people live, and we have to make sure that it's affordable.
It's hard enough to buy a home since 2020 with prices up 38% and the interest rate on that mortgage 5 percentage points higher. But those 2 sticker shocks are just the start. A new report by Bankrate says the hidden costs of homeownership are up 26% since 2020. This includes property taxes, homeowners insurance, and home maintenance costs, including utility bills. Bankrate says the tab for a typical single-family home runs more than $18,000 a year. That's $1,500 a month on top of your mortgage payment. In 2020, the same expenses ran around $1,200 a month, a 26% increase in 4 years. These hidden costs affect all homeowners, from the ones paying a premium to get into the market today to those who got steals years ago. And 3 states in particular are seeing the biggest jumps. The hidden cost of homeownership in Utah is up 44% in 4 years, followed by Idaho at 39% and Hawaii at 38%. Utah and Idaho in particular saw huge leaps in home prices since the pandemic, which naturally increases the cost of taxes and insurance. Hawaii also tops the list for most expensive hidden costs overall at $29,000, while California, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Connecticut round out the top 5. If you're looking for the states with the least expensive hidden costs per year, look no further than Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Indiana. But even in less expensive states, the costs are still climbing. The smallest increase in hidden costs is 14% for Alaska and Texas, according to Bankrate. More existing homeowners are dropping insurance altogether because of price hikes. Last year, the Insurance Information Institute said 12% of homeowners did not purchase home insurance, up from just 5% in 2019. In order to go bare, as it's called, you have to own your home outright. Those unburdened by mortgage payments are still struggling with these hidden, increasing home ownership costs. We did a 3-part series on this. You can catch it at SAN.com or the SAN app by searching Home Insurance Crisis. As for those hoping to buy a home, the National Association of Home Builders says the typical family would have to spend 38% of their income on the mortgage alone for a new home, well above what's recommended. That doesn't even take into account the hidden costs of homeownership.
So that's interesting stuff. And as we're coming back here, a lot of folks are having problems with this hidden cost because home ownership is a challenge now. Since, as they said, the COVID time period, a lot of folks have struggled financially, and a lot of folks are trying to get things back if you want to call back to normal. And I see a lot of folks, that's one reason they're turning possibly to Donald Trump. They would like to see us return back to the time when we had better wages, and he had the drill baby drill mantra. And I think a lot of folks are still looking for that, saying, hey, is there a chance if Donald Trump became president, could he turn the economy around? Well, many feel yes, because he's done it before. And then the pandemic hit. Well, then in his last year there, he still brought a lot of economy back, even though half the country was shut down. Here's the thing I think a lot of folks are concerned with is small businesses. Small businesses have been still pretty much crushed from the COVID situation. We're finding out now that of the billions of dollars we're sending to the Ukraine, did you know every Ukraine small business owner gets a stimulus check from you, the American taxpayer? That's right. Once a month, the Ukraine small business owner gets a supplement check, compliments of the U.S. tax dollar. Now, you got to ask yourself, why aren't they giving stimulus checks to the American small business owner? That's a question for you to ask your politician and demand some answers before the upcoming election. I think the funding of the Ukraine has become very murky. It's become very, I think there's just so much going on. A lot of us are struggling because a couple of factoroos I'll just bring back to your attention is when the first bit of money went to the Ukraine, the first thing they did was give their politicians and their leadership a 60% raise. I thought they were at war. Then in December, the first year of the war, Zelensky's wife goes on a $2 million shopping spree. Yes, you can please try to fact check me. And then the other thing we find out is FTX scandal. Right before the midterms, Zelensky felt a need while he's at war to invest billions of dollars that we sent to him. He sent down to the Bahamas in FTX, which came back to America on the midterm election day, and it went poof. Nobody knows where it went. Yeah, right. I think we know where it went. It's called money laundering. Jesse Waters, he did a great documentary on this from Fox News. You should go watch Jesse Waters' FTX documentary. He, with more detail, explains how the money was tracked from what we can track, if you will, and the beanbag boy that's taken the fall. I mean, come on. Did anyone really believe that bushy-head kid is the sole conspirator, if you will, of losing billions of dollars? Because FTX was the second largest donor to the Democratic Party behind George Soros. If you go back and look at donor records for the midterms of 2022, the second largest donor was FTX. Okay, and then all the money went kapooey, and this kid's going down, and you're going, hey, where's the money? So as you start seeing this, and you start realizing money that goes to the Ukraine isn't staying in the Ukraine, where is it going? The other thing you might do is go look at government payroll.gov and look how we have now 100 people paid more than the President of the United States. Now, when Donald Trump was in office, I checked that. Donald Trump was paid, he was the 7th highest paid. Dr. Anthony Fauci was the highest. Now, the president makes $400,000 a year. Anthony Fauci made between $430, $450 before the benefits and the extra kick-ins. Right before Anthony Fauci retired, they gave him a 30% increase. Why? So that when he retired, he maintained his same salary. Let's see what you think about that. But regardless, Donald Trump gave away his salary. He gave it to different organizations. You can go and fact check that. So once a quarter, he gave his salary to others in need. But the bottom line is he was paid $400,000 a year. When you go look now at the .gov payments, we have 100 people paid more than the President of the United States. They all make over $400,000. And by the way, I couldn't find Joe Biden when I looked up the top 150. Just saying. So what is going on with the payment? Well, they all have, the top 100 have this one title, medical officer. Medical officer. This is interesting. So I started looking up medical officer. And one of the largest medical associations around the globe is our Veterans Association. A lot of folks think that the Veterans Medical Association is just right here for our veterans. Not so, my friends. It's global. We've got hospitals all over the country. And we also found out, because of Equal Access Amendment, that we have 306 biolabs. 49 biolabs have now been confirmed by the Pentagon in the Ukraine. Could it be what we're actually paying for is hush money? Was there a leak? What happened? Don't know. All I'm telling you is we have 49 biolabs in the Ukraine that has finally been admitted to by the Pentagon. Tulsi Gabbard actually confirmed 27 when they were first denying that they existed. But then Newland, she accidentally slipped before a congressional committee and admitted that they exist. Then they had to come clean of how many. There are now 306 biolabs around the world that were sponsored by our Pentagon. Now you wonder why toilet paper costs $1 zillion in the budget. It's covering up costs for who knows what and who knows where. I say all this to say, Anthony Fauci, who has finally been admitted to so much of his shenanigans, he admitted to Congress that the 6-foot distancing was nothing more than his suggestion. Had no scientific proof. It was just his best suggestion, he said, to protect society. But there was no scientific proof, no scientific study done. Well, then he tried to come back the next day and say, oh, it's the CDC's idea. He kept changing his story. Well, then some CDC people came back and said, no, don't throw us under the bus. It was him. So you've got people pointing at each other during the COVID thing. But I've said this before. Don't you find it interesting that during the COVID shutdown, lockdown, if you will, they wanted us to stay in our houses. We couldn't leave, okay? But they could. I mean, there's pictures of Fauci at ball games sitting right next to people without a mask on. But no, we're not allowed to do that. We're supposed to be 6-foot distancing. And they pointed a gun-like object at your forehead to check your temperature. That was to intimidate you, my friend. There's other ways to check temperature. You don't need to point a gun at people's foreheads. Savvy? Think about this. 6-foot distancing. Pointing gun-like objects at people's foreheads. And very intentional. Very intimidating to some. Now, I was the guy that wouldn't wear the mask and wouldn't let them point things at my forehead. I walked around Walmart opposite the directions they told without a mask. And I said, listen, mandates aren't laws. Mandates are highly suggested, but mandates aren't laws. And when you get someone at the Welcome Center to finally admit that, and they let you in, all it takes is one knucklehead like me walking around without a mask, and all of a sudden people start saying, hey, why aren't you wearing a mask? Because this is a mandate, it's not a law. What's that mean? It's just you're highly suggested to wear the mask, but you don't have to. And Anthony Fauci said on more than one occasion the mask don't work. Okay, I'm an anti-vaxxer. I have been way before COVID. I don't like shots. I don't take flu shots. I don't like shots. I've taken a few when need be, but I do not like, and I won't take a bunch of shots. And you're not going to put vaccines, if you will, or what they call jabs in my body without telling me what's in them. And they didn't want to do that. So I told you this story, and I'll tell it again. I was at the Walgreens here in Ottawa, and I was actually going to get something else, but I saw this line of folks lining up for the jab. And so there were ladies behind me, and, you know, I get tickled watching these ladies whisper. And so I said, can I talk to the pharmacist? And the pharmacist comes. I said, you know, you always ask two questions usually at a pharmacy. Do I have any questions about the drug? And do I need to ask the pharmacist any questions? She goes, that's correct. I said, well, I have a question. Can you tell me what's in the shots here for the COVID vaccine? And the pharmacist looked at me and she said, well, no, I can't. I said, well, can you give me the little thing that goes inside the box that tells, you know, all the ingredients in the shotaroo? She goes, sure. She goes to pull one out. And to my she never thought to do this. Any pharmacist, any doctor that doesn't, and she pulled it out, and it was blank, 11 by 17 page, it all folded out, blank on both sides. I said, you're telling me you've taken a Hippocratic oath, ma'am. You're okaying putting that in people's bodies and you don't know what's in it? And she said, that's odd, isn't it? And I said, it's very odd. All of a sudden, two ladies behind me, you know, do the head bob thing. And other people said, so you're telling me to let you put something in my body you don't know what it is, and you are the pharmacist. I'm concerned. I don't think I'm going to let you do that. People started getting out of line. A good dozen of people walked out of that Walgreens. And after all those people left, she looked at me, she goes, well, sir, I guess you're not getting your shot. I said, well, I didn't come to get the shot. I came to get these vitamins, by the way. She said, well, why did you have to say all that? I said, because you guys are doing something to me that's criminal. You should not be giving shots to people you don't know what's in it. And she whispered to me, you're right. I say that to say Dr. Anthony Fauci, I think, has a lot to answer for, because what he did in the guise. Now, Dr. Burke even admitted, she said they lied to the president when asked about her role. She said the virus did come to America from China. And she said, so Trump, and she said, we lied to him when we said to flatten the curve. And when she was asked, what does that mean? She says, well, we were trying to flatten the curve per se. She goes, but that was really not true. There was no curve to flatten. We just knew if we shut down the country. You said in an interview that you gave. If we shut down the country for 2 weeks, then we knew the media would help us shut it down for 2 years, and that was our goal. So Dr. Birx, in her own book, said they lied to Donald Trump about flatten the curve, and they also lied about the virus coming from China, because she admitted in her book it came to China, came to America in a box from China. So this is Dr. Anthony Fauci. I've played it a few times, but I like to give Anthony Fauci all the truthful time I can.
It was part of an audiobook written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it? I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. And colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? Colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? They're going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? They're going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook on, and Facebook on, and Facebook, and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, when you make it difficult for people in their lives, when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
So, what do you think? Dr. Fauci on secret recording. Interesting, just like we got Nancy Pelosi on a secret recording, just days from each other.
Have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility. Clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility, and I take responsibility, and I take responsibility, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
Nancy Pelosi admitting January 6th was her fault. I'll be back after the break.
On Monday, Apple held its annual Worldwide Developers Conference, where it announced new upgrades to its devices and operating systems. But what's getting the most attention is Apple Intelligence, the tech company's new strategy for incorporating AI into its business model. Apple CEO's Tim Cook making the long-awaited announcement.
Recent developments in generative intelligence and large language models offer powerful capabilities that provide the opportunity to take the experience of using Apple products to new heights. So as we look to build in these incredible new capabilities, we want to ensure that the outcome reflects the principles at the core of our products.
Among its capabilities, Apple Intelligence will see an update to the voice assistant Siri, with Apple saying Siri will now better understand your questions, and you will also be able to type to Siri like other chatbots. And if Siri doesn't know the answer, it will ask if it can take your question to ChatGPT, with Apple announcing a partnership with OpenAI. New writing tools will see Apple Intelligence proofread, rewrite, and summarize text across various apps, and also suggest the right tone for the message. And you will be able to create your own custom emojis just by describing what you are looking for. Apple is calling these Genmojis. Apple Intelligence is set to launch in the fall.
So don't know what you think, but that sounds awful controlling. But some people like it. Here's some more news for you.
We've all heard eating a plant-based diet is good for your health, but it turns out that's not always the case. A new study backed by the World Cancer Research Fund found not all plant-based diets are created equal, and ultra-processed plant-based foods like popular vegan meat and dairy replacements could be putting your life at risk. Scientists found opting for plant-derived foods that are ultra-processed increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes. That means if you think you're doing your heart a favor by choosing a veggie burger instead of beef, you might want to think again. Researchers studied more than 118,000 people's diets and found those who regularly go for plant-based but ultra-processed foods are 15% more likely to suffer a heart attack or stroke than those who don't choose the ultra-processed choices. That's because they are still packed with fat, salt, and sugar. While ultra-processed junk foods have long been linked to health concerns, the study's authors say it's the first of its kind to link plant-based ultra-processed foods to increased risk of cardiovascular diseases.
So anyway, lots of folks getting into the meal planning deal. And, people saying, hey, I don't know if I want to go to a store anymore and buy food. I think I would rather get the food from my own backyard, if you will. and understandably so. So we'll see what happens in the days ahead. Many more folks are called what you might label preppers. They like to prepare their own food, and some are raising their own chickens, growing their own crops, actually even having their own rabbits, or if you want to call it some type of meat for them to use for feeding their families. I know some folks see that as a little bit excessive, but that's what they are. Well, let me ask you this, my friend. What would you think if they started wanting to put chaplains in the local school system? I think a lot of folks see this as a good move, but we're finding out this is CBN News bringing a report, and I kind of like the concept. Can you imagine if we had chaplains in the public school to help deal with counseling issues, depression, and all that? The only thing that concerns me is kind of what the military has done. They now have allowed Satanists to be chaplains and things that are what I would not call faith-based. That's my only concern. As long as they remained faith-based, I would not have a problem. But let's listen to more states pushing to include chaplains in public schools.
Identity to mental health, school-age children face serious challenges today. To help students, a number of states are allowing volunteer chaplains to serve as counselors in public schools. The latest is Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis recently signed a measure into law. Charlene Aaron reports on this growing trend.
After this law takes effect July 1st, the process will begin as volunteer chaplains apply and undergo background checks. Then it will be up to school districts, individual students, and their parents to take part.
No one's being forced to do anything, but to exclude religious groups from campus, that is discrimination. You're basically saying that God has no place. That's wrong.
Yeah, it's a great thing. My dad was a preacher. I'm a preacher's kid, and it's great.
More than a dozen states have proposed measures to allow chaplains in public schools.
17 states are involved in chaplain legislation. Just recently, it passed out of both houses of Louisiana. We expect it to be sent to the governor soon. It's happening around the country because it is so needed.
Florida House Speaker Paul Renner believes chaplains can possibly offer alternatives for students, pointing out that guidance counselors in the state had allowed and even encouraged students to transition to the opposite sex without their parents' consent.
They were giving them different clothes to wear, changing their name without ever telling their parents. And if this is the kind of guidance they're getting from guidance counselor, I think it's about time we have a different perspective in the middle of the school that does respect our values.
This push for chaplains comes as mental health issues among students are growing and schools face a shortage of counselors. According to the American School Counselor Association, the disparity for the 2022-2023 school year came in at a ratio of 385 students to one counselor. The recommended number is 250 to 1. Rocky Malloy leads the National School Chaplains Association.
I got news of 2 children that committed suicide. One was in 8th grade, one was in 10th grade. And it's schools that did not have chaplains. The chaplain's role is to prevent that type of calamity from happening.
In 2023, Texas became the first state to allow school chaplains to help counter a decrease in qualified mental health professionals and growing teacher burnout.
The idea that our teachers now are experiencing high levels of trauma and PTSD, that is something new that's happening in education, and our teachers need support. Chaplains are great to help our teachers through this.
Texas Board of Education member Julie Pickren says chaplains have also resulted in making schools safer.
A chaplain in Texas was key in one of our school districts at noticing what was happening with the students and what was going on with these young girls, and brought it to light to the sheriff, and was instrumental in identifying this human trafficking ring in a school district in Texas.
Critics, however, claim chaplains could do more harm than good. One concern being their only requirement is passing a background check, and that schools notate a chaplain's religious affiliation. The American Civil Liberties Union of Florida stating, public schools are not Sunday schools and chaplains are not school counselors. allowing chaplains to assume official positions, whether paid or voluntary, in public schools as counselors or other support staff will undermine this right by creating an environment ripe for evangelizing and religious coercion of students in violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, a claim Renner disputes.
The Constitution prohibits the establishment of a religion, for example, forcing us all to be Catholic or Baptist. It does not in any way, shape, or form, despite a lot of effort to say otherwise, prohibit the free exercise of religion. And so the left has done a good job of trying to get Christians out of the public life altogether.
Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, the Satanic Temple is seeking to take advantage of this movement, threatening to deploy its ministers into schools if the state approves a measure allowing chaplains. That's something the state's education chief, Ryan Walters, strongly opposes, saying Satanists are not welcome in Oklahoma's schools.
60 years ago, they said they did something. They said, we don't need God or spirituality in school. Look where it took us to today. God is back. The chaplain is the perfect person. They're the spiritual source of a school.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Now, when I was a youth pastor, and I did that for 18 years, I was at some very large churches and had hundreds of kids. I would get involved with FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I would get involved in Christian organizations trying to be able to be identified with teachers and with the principal, and therefore have their blessing to then have time with the students. I went to one church, and I had a lot of kids in the band. Now, I don't play an instrument, but I was identifying with the kids in the band. So I went to the band director and said, hey, do you mind if I start a FCM? He said, what's that? It said Fellowship of Christian Musicians. And he did not. So we started an FCM, and a majority of the band ended up in our youth group. And so I would go take pictures and do a slide presentation to music, and they thought that was wonderful. At their two-a-day camps, band camps, we would take them fruit cups, chilled fruit, and water and different things, just acts of service. And when things came up that needed prayer and guidance, the kids came to me. So it's investing your time. When I was in North Mississippi, and I've shared this story on air before, but I had spent a lot of time with See You at the Pole and other or opportunities on campus. The principal was not very welcoming at first because, he probably gets everybody one in his ear. So when we did the donuts, I gave away thousands of donuts. I had a large youth group and budget, of course. I would always take a box of donuts and write his name and take it by the office and say, hey, tell the principal these are for him. And after a while, I got a chance to talk with him. We got to become friends. And we hung out a little bit and at ball games and stuff. Sadly, 2 kids were killed in a car wreck, and this was the announcement that went over the speaker. Brother Macil's in the library today. If anybody needs prayer or counseling, you have blessings to miss the classes and go and let him counsel or pray with you. I got there at 8 a.m., and I stayed to nearly 4:30, almost 5. I was praying with kids, teachers. I didn't even get lunch. That's how much I was able, with the principal's blessing, pray with kids all day long. And so I just encourage you out there, it's harder now. If you have a youth pastor or a youth worker at your church, you need to love them and lift them up because they're in a battle I can't imagine today with the smartphones and computers and things they deal with. But I can tell you this, getting in the kids' world, it's harder than ever. Principals are very skeptical, and rightfully so. You just heard on this report I just played for you, the Satanic Church has said, if you let the Christians in, we're going to demand equal access because the Equal Access Amendment pretty much says that. So do you deny Christians so you keep the devil out? Or do you allow both of them in and see which one will win the ear of the child? It's a lot of discussion out there, but there are tried and true Fellowship of Christian Athletes. There's a lot of good organizations that are meant to embrace the campus and embrace the kids in the name of Christ. Find a way. I was involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes for years, and when I was there in North Mississippi, I was asked to be a co-chairman. We had a Promise Keeper group, and the FCA director and we did a rally for 8,000 to 10,000 kids there in Memphis, and it was pretty cool. We brought in, and I can't remember the football player's name to speak to them, and then they dovetail into the men's Promise Keepers. It was pretty much for boys, and it's something. If you've ever been in a stadium, like 30, 40,000 men singing "This Little Light of Mine," I'm going to let it shine. And these big grown men are weeping as they sing that silly song. It's not really silly, but it's a kid's song. But that's how God moves sometimes. It's powerful. Lots going on. Harvard doctor warns a stock up on these meds before they are gone. A lot of folks are getting concerned with the things that have happened since COVID and with the Biden regime. Never heard of Dr. Fig Dean, chief of COVID task force at the New England Complex Systems Institute. This Harvard-educated epidemiologist was one of the very first scientists of the so-called trajectory of the COVID-19 pandemic in January 2020. He's sounding the alarm, saying now it's going to be the bird flu. And unlike the FDA and their fetish for vaccines, Dr. Fing provides common sense instructions on what we can do to be prepared and safe. And so there's an article here in the Gateway Pundit if you want to read it. And this doctor, and on his X account, he said, to be clear, absolutely do not lie to your doctor. You can actually get Tamiflu as a drug. You can get the drug for prevention of infection before you get sick, and it does it work for flu prevention? Yes, it does. So ask your doctor. But he's going on to talk about these different drugs out here that you need to stock up on with it coming, and he has this wellness company contagion kit. And he lists all the things that are in there, one being Tamiflu tablets. And so he just says get prepared because evidently there's going to be a plandemic number 2. Some call it pandemic or plan, P-L-A-N, plandemic, meaning they're going to try to scare the crap out of the world again. And the World Health Organization, you got to just have some common sense here. The World Health Organization is trying to get countries to allow them to tell everyone what to do, and that you will give up your sovereignty, okay, your Constitution, Bill of Rights, and have to follow any laws that they globally say, okay? Now, they're doing this global indoctrination over the last 18 months, trying to prepare us that we need to let the World Health Organization tell us all what to do. And then they're saying, by the way, there's a bird flu, and we're predicting. How do they know when these things are going to hit? Well, because just like COVID-19, when you go back and do the research, did you know in the back of your Lysol can it used to say kills the common cold, and in parentheses it said COVID-19? Well, they've taken that off the current Lysol cans, but the old Lysol cans used to basically says kills the common cold, COVID-19. Pause. Let it sink in. Well, now they're coming up with the bird flu. It's going to be supposedly the next pandemic. And they're going to use the crossing of the border, many of us feel, as the excuse. Oh, my, whoopsie-doopsie. We let a lot of folks come across the border unvaccinated. They've brought a new form of super-duper flu to us, and you better do what we say. You're going to die. I just don't buy their what they're selling. Okay, some of you do. I know you think, and they used to have that thing, whatever the science said. The science has been pretty much manipulated. I think we're seeing that even more so. Well, Biden recalls dubious story about going through the wetlands of Delaware. boy, he's such a storyteller. He ought to write a book, The Adventures of Joe, because I think a lot of us, and put it in the fiction section, but telling armed fishermen he wants to ban their guns. You can watch the video if you want. But Joe Biden delivered a speech at Evantown Gun Sense University at the Washington Hilton after his son Hunter was found guilty of 3 federal gun felonies. Again, don't you find that awful coinky-dinks? He's speaking at a gun rally to ban guns, and his son's convicted on gun charges. And if you look at what Joe Biden is being convicted of, it appears what they're trying to get on record using his son is a way to get us, if we misstep on the application of a gun permit. The attendees were left with an empty lectern 1 hour after Biden's speech was supposed to begin. He arrived 1 hour late to his speech. Joe Biden's 20-minute speech was full of gaffes and lies. At one point, Joe Biden recalled a dubious story about going through the wetlands of Delaware and confronting hunters and fishermen. Biden claimed he told an armed fisherman he wanted to ban his assault weapon. There was no such thing as an assault weapon, and this never happened. I came across a guy who was fishing, he said. You want to take my gun? And I looked at him and I said, I don't want to take your gun. You're allowed to have a gun, but I want to take away your ability to use an assault weapon, Biden said. And Biden continued, and I said, guess what? If you need 12 to 100 bullets in a gun, in a magazine, you're a lousy shot. And he goes on to just make fun of gun ownership. Well, he also went on to say in his speech, if they want to think that they're going to take on the government if we get out of line, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need rifles. Okay, Biden puts conservatives on notice, evidently. Joe Biden, as he delivered this speech at the Gun Sense University at Washington, he says, you can't make this stuff up. Biden's 20-minute speech was a total disaster. And he went on, he mocked the Tree of Liberty. He mocked the Second Amendment and supporters and threatened millions of conservatives. If you want to think to take on government, if we get out of line, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need a rifle. And he was basically making fun of the excuse that you have the Second Amendment in case the government gets out of line, that you can defend yourselves. He goes on to say, I love my right-wing friends, talking about the Tree of Liberty, is watered with the blood of patriots. If you want to take on the federal government, and he said again, you need the F-15s. You don't need an R-15, Biden said. For those brave right-wing Americans, if you want to fight against the country, and he kept repeating it, and then he said, I'm not joking, okay? So anyway, Joe Biden, confrontive, combative, on the very day his son was found guilty of gun charges. Interesting stuff, is it not? How in the world did we get here with that guy? I don't know. It's a mystery of the ages, and I think a lot of folks are saying, hey, how in the world did Hunter Biden? Now, the Daily Wire says Hunter Biden and his legal team responds to felony convictions, and the president, Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and his legal team responded to the multiple felony convictions doled out against him in federal court on Tuesday, saying they would pursue available legal challenges. Jurors convicted Hunter Biden 54 on all 3 felony counts, including lying to federal licensed firearm dealer, making a false claim on a federal firearms background check, and from being in possession of an illegally obtained firearm. Hunter Biden faces 25 years in prison for his crimes and up to $750,000 in fines. We are naturally disappointed by today's verdict, said Abel Lowell, Hunter's attorney. We respect the jury's process, and we have done thorough throughout the case. and we will continue to vigorously pursue the legal challenges available to Hunter. And so evidently they are looking to do an appeal. He'll be sentenced in 20 days. Don't know what you think about all this. A lot of mixed feelings. Some feel that it's awful coinky-dinks that he is being sentenced the day his dad speaks at a gun event, which is not a pro-gun event, it's an anti-gun event. So the USA Today has what's next for Hunter Biden: sentencing likely appeal and looming trial on tax charges. You can go to the USA Today and read this in full. But Hunter Biden's conviction is his federal gun trial is not the end of his legal drama. Still pending are the 50-year-old sentence, his potential appeal, and the Supreme Court case that could overturn the law behind his charges. The president's son, a lawyer, businessman, and author, also faces a second federal trial on tax charges, and that's supposed to begin on September 5th in Los Angeles. So that should be interesting, of course, to keep up with. This is the Patriot Pastor Macil Duncan. Thank you for listening to the show. We've got 1 hour left. Don't forget my book, Move Your Mountains. That's right, Move Your Mountains, Learn the Journey of Faith. And we appreciate all that have been listening, been reading the book, telling their friends. It's such a blessing. I'll be back after the news break. This is Fox Business. Is the tide turning?
Bring in Charlie Hurt. Morning to you, Charlie. More than half of the voters say that Trump's conviction doesn't impact their vote. So does that mean, by extension, that the Democrats' lawfare tactic failing?
Yeah, I think without a doubt. They got their convicted felon, which is what they've wanted all along. And while I'm always suspicious about polling, at this point in a race, when you look at trends, the trends are usually not deniable, and the trends show that as Lauren said, the race has not been overturned by all of this stuff. So and I think you're exactly right. I think that the real problem for Democrats is the fact that not only has it not hurt him in polling, but it's actually helped him at every step of the way. Resuscitate his career. Think about where we were 1 year ago and where we are today. Donald Trump today is stronger than he has been at any point since, I would say, in his political life, even before 2016.
Fascinating, isn't it? Also, look, Trump raked in millions at these Silicon Valley fundraiser hosted by venture capitalist David Sachs. I guess the question, Charlie, is Silicon Valley turning a little bit on Biden and the Democrats?
I think that they're looking at the same things that most voters are looking at, and it's impossible to avoid the truth that Democrat policies, Joe Biden's policies, are hurting the country, and it's hurting the economy, it's hurting everything. And so they're just basically looking at reality and realizing that, okay, they can get behind a guy who, if you take away all of the hysteria surrounding Donald Trump and you take away Democrat, Republican, you just look at the basic policy ideas. The policy ideas of Donald Trump are so commonsensical, mainstream, normal. They're obviously good policies that 80% of the population or more in some cases, such as, I don't know, having a border, would get behind. And so I think that's the obvious thing that they're seeing. And I think it's what we're seeing with voters. And I think that only sort of improves among voters for Donald Trump between now and the election.
I think you're exactly right. And a very frail-looking president also doesn't help his standing either. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us on this.
So you've got a lot of folks concerning about the tide turning on the Bidens, and it does seem like the media are not protecting him as they once did. Now, Forbes has a interesting take on this. Steve Forbes does a montage here of about a few minutes, and I want you to listen. He says he believes Biden's going to have to drop out of the race. I know there's difference of opinion on this. Many folks felt that Michelle Obama was going to take his place before now. The Democrats have bumped their convention, the first week of August, which is awful late for them. I think what will happen is Trump and Biden, this first debate, Biden will be sitting down, not standing. There'll be no audience, okay, to distract him. He's got the easiest opportunity, but he's got to go against Trump. The other thing they did for him is they wouldn't let Kennedy in. I still think it'd be great if Kennedy was in the debates because, but I think the Democrats are afraid that Kennedy would do too well and pull too many Democrats. But we'll see. But this is, see what you think. This is Steve Forbes on why he thinks Biden will drop out of the race and there'll be a new person appointed.
Just how will Joe Biden pull out of the presidential race? Hello, I'm Steve Forbes, and this is What's Ahead, where you get the insights you need to navigate these turbulent times. President Biden's supercharged State of the Union address a few months ago quieted talk among Democrats about forcing him to drop his bid for a second term. But the quieting was only temporary. The continued, painfully obvious mental decline of our commander-in-chief has revived widespread public speculation of his withdrawing. A few observers think that this might be the political equivalent of a head fake, lowering expectations for his upcoming debate performance against Donald Trump. That highly anticipated verbal slugfest is barely 3 weeks away. After all, there are rumblings of pushing Biden out before his boffo State of the Union triumph. But the volume this time is more extensive and the tone more anxious. The fact that several Democrats, almost always off the record, are whispering concerns to the media reveals growing worries about this president's fitness to stay the course for this campaign. Hardly anyone believes he can navigate the rigors of a second term. This, of course, leads to basic questions. Will Biden bow out before the June 27 debate with Trump? Unlike his appearances these days, the president won't be aided by teleprompters. His unscripted remarks are routinely and embarrassingly confused and garbled. Would a combination of anger, which might fuel a temporary clarity of mind, extensive rehearsals, and some exotic elixirs enable Biden to complete a 90-minute debate, especially since the likely moderators would be on his side and former President Trump might overplay his hand? Perhaps this is what certain White House aides and the powerful, highly influential First Lady are counting on. It's a high risk, however. A fumbling performance would make a subsequent pullout particularly humiliating. Even if Biden makes it through the June 27 challenge, his continuing decline in public and private meetings will fire up ever-deepening misgivings among voters, knowing a ballot cast for Biden would be a ballot cast for Kamala Harris, sooner rather than later for her to sit in the Oval Office. When Biden steps down, who would replace him and how? He would likely quit the campaign, but not the presidency. Harris would remain vice president. Fevered meetings would follow among Democrats as party leaders would try to orchestrate the anointment of a candidate the way they did in 2020 with Joe Biden to block frontrunner Bernie Sanders. The frontrunner here would be California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's never made secret his lust for the nation's top job. But Democrats may conclude his record makes him too vulnerable, and instead would go for an unknown candidate with a cleaner slate, particularly one of their governors, like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Wesley Moore of Maryland, or Jared Polis of Colorado. A big international financial or military crisis may force Biden out, as he does not have the mental agility to handle such a situation the way John Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kamala Harris may yet get to sit in the big chair. Either way, Joe Biden will not be the head of the Democratic ticket this November. I'm Steve Forbes. Thanks for listening. Do send in your comments and suggestions, and I look forward to being with you soon again.
So that's Steve Forbes. I don't know what you think about that, but he seems to have a concern that there's going to be a replacing of Joe the Biden. That's been a very popular conspiracy theory. It's floated around. And you can't, here's some things you can't get away from, too. Joe Manchin just stepped away from the Democratic Party and announced he's becoming independent. He also announced he's not running for re-election. Okay, well, why wouldn't he just finish out the rest of this year as a Democrat? Why did he have to make that announcement last week that he's now an independent? There's got to be something that's going to be happening with Mr. Joe the Manchin. There's a possibility, one, he may run for governor as an independent, which would split the vote three ways, and or he could run for Senate as an independent and split the vote three ways. But some people feel he's aligning himself with the independent because it's really growing. Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy have become very, very popular among the voter blocks of the independents, if you will. And Tulsi Gabbard was asked, why do they hate Donald Trump so much? You know, because that's a good question. Why is Donald Trump hated so much? And, you know, and here's a lady that was a former Democrat. She was the Hawaii congresswoman. But she answered this because she's doing a book tour right now. And but the question is, why do they hate Donald Trump? And I think she would know because once she played for the other team, if you will. Many think she's on the short list to be his vice president. But here is Tulsi Gabbard answering the question, why do they, meaning the Democrats, hate Donald Trump so much? Or I guess even the rhinos, such as the Lincoln the Project and the those that back Haley, etc. Check it out.
And,
well, you know,
I don't get it.
The thing that you're talking about is, I think a lot of the Democrat elite realize that when you actually contrast and compare the records of these two presidents, as you said, there really is no there's no gray space there. The contrast is very clear, and that's why they use these distraction and diversionary and deflection tactics to tell people, oh, look over here, Trump said something mean about somebody else. Mm-hmm. Or look over here, this person made this accusation about Trump. Or, you know, they use this fear mongering. They say, oh, Trump is going to destroy our democracy because they're trying to get us to look away from the fact that they are destroying our democracy. Well, you know, Trump is going to do this and that. Well, they're trying to distract us away from the reality of how they are actively destroying and undermining our Constitution. You know, why is this the now common term, the Trump derangement syndrome, so prevalent amongst the Democrat elite? It's because they know they can't control him, and he poses a direct threat to their establishment and their power because he's elite. It's because they know they can't control him.
Think about that. Tulsi Gabbard, who was formerly vice president of the Democratic Party, was a superdelegate in the Democratic Party, was once a presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, says something very interesting about Donald Trump. She says they can't control him.
The now common term, the Trump derangement syndrome, so prevalent amongst the Democrat elite. It's because they know they can't control him. Democrat elite, it's because they know they can't control him. They know they can't control him. They know they can't control him. They know they can't control him.
I think that's bottom line. I think that's, if you just boil it all down, Donald Trump thinks for himself. Now, I'm sure there's concessions he's had to make, like he allowed Vice President Pence on the ticket. That wasn't his choice, but you know, he's made some concessions. But the bottom line, they can't control him, and I think that's what makes him, in their mind, dangerous. He just might get in office and do something that derails what they're talking about. Now, if you remember, Zelensky said back in January that Donald Trump lives rent-free in the heads of all their minds. They're at Davos, all the world leaders, because they were all fearful, what if he wins? This was Zelensky now, you know, the Ukraine actor who became president. Here's the rest of what Tulsi said.
And he poses a direct threat to their establishment and their power because he's one of these guys who's not afraid to call them out.
Their established power, and he's not afraid to call them out.
He's not afraid to challenge the norm and say, hey, that thing you guys have been doing for decades and that may have Republican and Democrat support, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It's not working for the American people. He says the things that a lot of people within our political world are too afraid to say, even though they know it's true. And this is why he poses a threat. He's not going to be bullied by the military-industrial complex. He's not going to be bullied by any of these other special interests who people in Washington care more about pleasing than they do about pleasing and serving the interests of the American people.
Isn't it interesting? Now, she is a veteran, has served as a military. I believe she's still in the reserves. So she understands military life, and she is calling out the military complex as well. It's a very powerful force, my friends. We can't take it too much for granted. Well, also the other thing that's coming out is world leaders. There is a world leader that has come out and said the child sex trafficking is for real. He also said that sacrificing children is for real. He was Tucker Carlson, but the other thing he did was he helped take the murder rate of one of the highest murder rating countries down, and he brought law and order. This is Tucker Carlson, and he talks about the Democrats' worst mistake. See what you think about this. The Rubin Report. I'm playing their little minute clip here. This is really good. Listen, please. If you're pumping gas, pause a minute and listen to this.
That's the problem with endogamous groups, right? Because they all, yeah, we're so great. Yeah, let's do it.
This is President Nayib Bukele, who's now the two-term president of El Salvador, who took a country that was the #1 country in terms of murders in the world, and now it is basically the safest country in all of the West. And here he is talking about the lawfare against Donald Trump.
There was a way to stop the candidacy, then he's probably in trouble. But if there's no way to stop him from competing in the election, all the things that they do to him will just give him more votes, right?
That seems to be happening.
Yes, I mean, either you stop the candidacy, or you let him be. But just hitting him you're making the greatest campaign ever. I mean,
do you think they know that?
Some of them, I think some of them do, but of course the ones that don't, or they think that that's the problem with endogamous groups, right? Because they all yeah, we're so great, yeah, let's do it, and they're making a huge mistake.
That's what we have to hope, that they are making a huge mistake, that they are waking up a sleeping giant, that more people on the fence who never were going to vote for Trump, or who maybe were going to sit it out, or just weren't enthused, or whatever it might be, will suddenly be like, actually, the Democrats kind of suck, and maybe I wasn't loving Trump, but we have to stop this.
And I can agree. And you got to hope more folks will vote, and voting is your right, my friends. Each and every one of you have a right to vote, and I hope you'll understand. I have a democratic right to vote as a citizen, and because if you don't, this guy is going to be your president again, Biden, who appears to have slurred speech. His words don't mean to make sense at the White House Juneteenth event.
If you can believe it, banning books about black experience in America, trying to erase and rewrite history. Banning books about black experience in America. She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured. These black soldiers were a link in a distinguished line of patriots, enslaved and free, who risked their lives in every war since the founding of our ideals, and we don't know fully what American soil is.
Biden doesn't, this guy's supposed to be the leader of the free world. He can't control his tongue, much less control the country. I don't know about you guys, but this is very concerning that this guy is still the president, and he's running for election, and there's some people out there that would vote for him. there's people that actually would vote for this guy. And I think it's very interesting now that we're finding out the breaking news that Mr. Biden, his son...
Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all 3 felony charges related to a 2018 gun purchase. Jurors found him guilty of lying to a federally licensed gun dealer, making a false claim on an application by stating he was not a drug user and possessing the gun illegally for 11 days. He faces up to 25 years in prison. However, first-time offenders rarely receive the maximum sentence, and it's unclear if he'll serve any time behind bars. Joe Biden has remained distant from the federal courtroom and has stated he will not seek to pardon his son. Hunter Biden's legal troubles are not over. He faces a trial in September in California for failing to pay $1.4 million in taxes. In this gun case, the prosecution focused on Hunter Biden's severe drug problem, presenting highly damaging and embarrassing evidence. Testimonies from his ex-wife and a former girlfriend highlighted his habitual crack use. Jurors saw images of Hunter Biden in disheveled states and videos of him weighing crack cocaine. Audio excerpts from his 2021 memoir, Beautiful Things, detailed his descent into addiction following his brother Beau's death. Defense attorneys argued that Hunter Biden's state of mind was different when he bought the gun compared to when he wrote the memoir.
So there's a lot of folks out there. There's a lot of, opinion. Joe Biden and his son. But, what is next for Hunter Biden following his conviction? Well, he's got more cases coming up. And this is the New York Post and their take of what's next for Hunter Biden. See what you think of the New York Post.
So Tuesday was a historic day in Delaware. First son Hunter Biden became the first offspring of a sitting president to be convicted of federal charges, as a jury of 6 men and 6 women deliberated 3 hours before coming to the conclusion that the 54-year-old knowingly lied about his crack cocaine addiction in order to purchase a firearm on October 12, 2018. Now, in speaking to jurors about this case, what we've noticed is that they do have a lot of sympathy for what Hunter Biden was going through, especially his family, but ultimately the prosecution made what turned out to be an open and shut case that, yes, Hunter Biden was an addict at the time. Yes, he knowingly lied about that fact in order to get a dangerous weapon, and as a result, he'll be facing up to 25 years in prison when sentencing commences later this year. The judge hasn't set an exact date, but she noted in court today that normally those hearings take place about 4 months after the verdict is handed down. If that holds true here, it means Hunter Biden will be finding out if he spends any prison time exactly when his father's re-election campaign will be hitting the home stretch in mid, possibly late October. So Hunter Biden faces up to 25 years in prison. That's the maximum, taking each of the 3 charges into account. However, the prosecutors are not going to ask for that, in large part because he doesn't have a criminal record. He doesn't have any felony convictions to his name. So it is entirely possible that they'll only ask for a couple years in jail, or maybe no jail time at all, maybe even probation or some kind of community service or home confinement.
Well, it's interesting that his father is speaking at an event. It's a gun prevention event on the day his son is sentenced. And a lot of folks think that's a coinky-dinks. I don't. I just think, I don't think the dude's going to do any time. That's just me. I think, we're kind of watching a movie. I think a lot of folks think that way, get the popcorn out, etc. But President Biden greets his son after conviction. Evidently, Joe flew to Delaware to hug his son. This is the Washington Post. They have a video here of him, Hunter Biden, coming out to Air Force One at the airport. And it's got Joe Biden embracing Hunter. And they're having a little love fest. It's got Jill and the sister and all the others there, and it looks like they're trying to do, I guess, what families do when you get good or bad news. You rally, and I think that's what they're trying to do here. So Hunter Biden convicted. Now the interesting thing about Hunter Biden's conviction, a lot of folks are realizing now, is item number 16. item number 16 that the FBI brought, this is very interesting. They brought in a sealed clear bag Hunter Biden's laptop, and they presented it as evidence, item number 16. Do you realize what this does? Item number 16, the laptop of Hunter Biden, one, dispels the 50 intelligence officers that signed that lying letter back in 2020 saying this was Russian disinformation. Secondly, it now puts in the federal government officially, even though they had the laptop, it's now been officially entered into evidence into a federal case, and it has the information about his drug use, about his pedophilia issues, about his dealings abroad. And the FBI made it clear in the presentation saying this is not Russian disinformation. So item number 16, the official laptop of Hunter Biden, it was also brought in a sealed clear bag because they wanted them to see the cocaine fingerprints. He literally left cocaine on his fingers as he typed the last time he used the laptop, and it had cocaine trackings on there, and they wanted folks through the clear bag to be able to see that Hunter Biden was a cocaine addict, and he has a lot of things on the laptop that are very damning and could possibly be carried over into his next legal battle in California about the IRS and his mismanagement of funds and not paying his taxes. So this is interesting. It's very, very interesting that Hunter Biden and the Biden family is seeing this now. A lot of folks thought, hey, would we ever see the Biden family face any kind of true persecution? And there's more breaking news about Hunter Biden and his cocaine addiction from the White House. This is breaking news. See what you think.
The Secret Service was investigating the shocking discovery of cocaine just steps from the Oval Office. Conservative media is pointing the finger at the president's troubled son, Hunter.
This was all unfolding in between visits from the president's son, Hunter, a recovering drug addict.
You can tour the White House if you give him an ounce of cocaine. But it got shut down when somebody found his cocaine.
Secret Service evacuated parts of the White House yesterday.
Hunter likes cocaine.
You identified Hunter Biden was paying prostitutes related to a potential prostitution ring. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Yes, that's correct.
They won't prosecute when he buys prostitutes and cocaine.
The D.C. Fire Department confirmed it was cocaine.
When they impeach Trump, he celebrates with a bump of cocaine.
Hunter Biden had written off payments to prostitutes.
Hunter likes cocaine.
There were deductions for what we believe to be escorts, and then that $10,000 golf club membership that was for a sex club.
His computer got pawned while he was high on cocaine. He said it was hacked, but he sold it for crack cocaine.
Dishonorably discharged. That's not true. It wasn't dishonorably. Cocaine use.
Hunter likes cocaine.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it.
While Joe sniffs minors, Hunter is snorting liners of cocaine. He snorted his brother's ashes. He thought it was a stash of cocaine.
Talking about my son, Bo Biden, you're talking about me. I don't know, Bo.
Hunter likes cocaine.
Hunter Biden is a degenerate drug user. His own father was the man in the U.S. Senate for over a decade pushing for stronger penalties for crack cocaine users.
And that's the news. I don't know if you heard that breaking news. that Mr. Hunter is a cocaine addict, and the cocaine bag in the White House, the cocaine on the laptop, all this stuff. And the bottom line is, we're finding out many Democrats are now softly whispering somebody needs to step up. The Democrats are in quite trouble because just like they thought they were going to hurt Trump, the opposite's happening with Biden. The more of these issues come out, Biden's not getting stronger, he's getting weaker. He's losing in all the polls. There's a poll that came out today that has Trump up 5 points, a solid 5 points in Georgia. He's up in every swing state by 5 to 6 points. He's right now up nationally. Now, I had Ankus, my friend from New Jersey. He listens to the show. He did a call-in yesterday, and he lives in New Jersey, and he lives amongst the blue, if you will, the Democrats. And he says he believes Trump can flip New York and New Jersey. He believes if it's a fair election, Donald Trump will flip New York and New Jersey because of the buzz he hears. Now, Ankus is coming to America from India. He has been working on his citizenship now for almost 6 years. He has a green card, and he's done all this stuff to become a citizen, and he's actually read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. He says, I love what this country stands for. He goes, and the more he's read it, is become more convinced Donald Trump is the guy. Now, the interesting thing, he said, when you're becoming a citizen here in America, majority of the volunteers that help with the process of new people coming to the country are Democrats. So they're led to believe, through maybe accidental or intentional, that the Democratic Party is the only real party for them. So many immigrants, when they first come in, are really proselytized by the Democratic Party. But after they've been here, like my friend Ankus and others, it doesn't take them long to see through the minutia and see, no, they're not. And but he said that's why he believes they're so big on the illegal, because, see, illegal folks don't study the Constitution. They don't go through the classes to learn what it means to be an American, savvy? Got it? So when they bring people in the middle of the night and fly them to these sanctuary cities, these folks don't go through any citizenship training. They have no idea what it means to be an American or what America stands for. See, that's why they're not wanting to bring folks through the port of entry and take them through the legal process, because when you go through the process legally, you learn what it means to be a part of this great nation. And when they do, they're fearful that you learn the truth, you're going to want to vote to the party. Now, the GOP is not a perfect party, and I pick on them often. But the GOP, between them and the Democrats, it's clear. You have much more conservatism in the GOP. You tend to have more Christianity, which I'm a Christian, in the GOP. They're more pro-life, protect the children. That's one of my big things. They're pro-Second Amendment, and they're pro-Constitution. See, it's hard to find that in the Democratic Party. What you tend to find in the Democratic Party is hatred, progressivism, conflict, and confrontation. You don't find a lot of unity in the Democratic Party. Can I give you an example, a modern-day example of the Democratic Party and how they do things if you don't go along with them? Look what they've done to Caitlin Clark. The WNBA, which is very left, very woke, has decided not to include Caitlin Clark in the USA Olympic team. And all the reasoning, we've got to pick the 12 best players. Really? You've got one on there. She's on injured reserve. She hadn't even played this year. So that's a lie. The other thing is, we always want to go with the most experience. No. You let Rebecca Lobo, when she was a rookie, play. You let Candace Parks. You let Sue Bird. And there's several examples where you let people, girls right out of college, you always put one or two ceremoniously on the Olympic team to represent the college experience. They don't like Caitlin Clark for 3 reasons. 1, she's white. 2, she's straight. And 3, she's a Christian. She doesn't check their boxes. And that's why most folks that lean very left are isolationists and they're angry people. If you don't agree with them, they want to destroy you. And they're trying to do that to Caitlin Clark. They call it rite of passage and initiation. But they're flat out flagrantly fouling that young lady. And I like what she said. They've released a beast, or a demon, if you will. And she went out the other night and scored 30 points. I think Caitlin Clark has been trying to take it easy because she thought, hey, if I'm nice, maybe they won't. Nah, if Caitlin, light them up. Light them up. They have no mercy for you. I'd have none for them. I think the kid could score 30 to 40 points a night if she wants to. And I think she will. That's my opinion. But I think that's a perfect modern-day example because she caught the perfect storm if you think about it. All these guys, the Democrats want to support transgender and guys playing in girls' sports. And all of a sudden you have a girl that can beat boys. That doesn't fit their narrative. She can shoot logo threes like Steph Curry. They've even compared her and Steph Curry's release. And Steph Curry even said, I think she has a faster release than I do. And when she was looking for a sneaker deal, if you remember, Steph Curry and Under Armour offered her $50,000 to go under the umbrella of Steph Curry and them do a joint project together. And she wisely said, no, I'd rather just go with Nike and do my own shoe. So she got a $28 million deal for her own shoe, the first of its kind for women athletes. She's the first athlete since Michael Jordan for Spalding to let her do a autographed basketball that you'll see on sale in all your Walmarts and sports stores very, very shortly. It's been since Michael Jordan, Wilson has allowed someone to do the autograph on the ball. Her jersey on the night of the draft outsold all the Dallas Cowboys in a full year. She did that in one night. And then after her first week, she's got the largest sale jersey globally. And you're leaving her off the U.S. Olympic team because jealousy. And I think what this has done, I love it when liberals step in poo and stink to high heavens, and they try to blame everyone else, but everyone's going, no, it's you, stinker. You smell. You. And right now, the WNBA have to own up to the fact that they have been prejudiced. They don't practice what they preach. And what you're seeing right now is the populace of America saying, you know what? If you watch the games, a game that Caitlin Clark is in averages 17 to 20,000 viewers. In WNBA games without Caitlin Clark averages 5 to 7,000 viewers. Savvy? When Caitlin Clark comes to town, most of these teams have to rent bigger arenas because the small little junky gyms that they play in normally can't handle the crowd. And you're leaving her off the Olympic team because jealousy. You'll not convince me otherwise. But I think in time, it'll come even more so.
It's everything you wish for.
And I think once it does, there's going to be a lot of possibly changing of the guard, I think will happen. That's just me. Donald Trump spoke this Sunday in Nevada, and he won a lot of them over with pretty much saying, hey, I'm going to make sure you keep all your tips because, you know, Biden and them have tried to tax people's tips. If you're a waiter or waitress or you work in any profession where you get tips, they're trying to make it, especially if we go cashless and everyone pays with a credit card, that they can tax your tips. That's not American.
Donald Trump visited Las Vegas on Sunday and offered a huge gratuity to the estimated 260,000 hotel and food service workers here and millions more across the country who count on customer tips. Return me to office, the former president said, and your tip income won't be taxed. The declaration drew a roar from the gathering, which vastly exceeded the reported 6,000 tickets issued. In July, Nevada's minimum wage for tipped employees will rise to $4.35 an hour, but employers will still be required to make sure those workers earn at least $9.50 an hour. Trump made his promise at an outdoor rally in the city's Sunset Park, attended by supporters who braved 100-degree temperatures and a blazing sun to see their candidate for the White House. The announcement was apparently a drop-in to the former president's campaign stump speech, in which he excoriated crooked Joe Biden's recent immigration executive order, which supposedly closes the southern border if certain criteria are met, as BS. The crowd started chanting the full word for a minute or so. Trump was jovial with the crowd, asking, "It's not too hot out here, is it?" They were so worried that we issued a warning, "Don't come," so only 20,000 showed up, quipped the ex-prez. That number could not be independently verified, however. Before the rally, several Trump backers expressed steadfast support for their candidate, suggesting a possible flip of Nevada, which backed Joe Biden 4 years ago.
So that's going to be interesting if Donald Trump is able to flip states such as Nevada and the swing states. And we're seeing that he possibly has that ability. People are lining up in his favor, but that still remains to be seen. We're not 100% sure. But electronic voting expands as FBI raises concerns about security issues with the upcoming election in 2024.
Tens of millions of Americans will cast their ballot in what could be a contentious presidential election in less than 5 months. Some in person, some through the mail, and select citizens electronically via email, fax, or online portals. More than 30 states and D.C. are offering electronic voting for U.S. military and overseas voters. Some states have even expanded electronic ballot returns for people with disabilities.
The further down I got in my vision, the more difficult it became to vote. With this new system that we have in the state of Nevada, it has made it a lot easier.
Nevada is also the first state to give this option to native tribes on reservations and colonies. While some see it as making voting rights more equal, others warn of the security risk of expanding electronic voting. The FBI and other agencies recommend keeping the practice limited, calling electronic ballot return high risk that should be used only by voters who have no other means. Election officials worry about what could happen to the ballot in transit electronically, with some believing the best method is for voters to print out electronic ballots and mail them in. Others have pointed out there are no federal guidelines for electronic voting, despite efforts in 2022 to create them. Still, Nevada Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar maintained his state system is safe and regulated.
I am confident in our system. One is the verification process, but it's also two, being able to validate the voter in a secure way.
Aguilar says Nevada's system has regular security reviews and updates.
So that was interesting that Nevada guy was mentioned there. Trump just spoke in Nevada. And the one thing that would be very interesting is if he's able to flip, especially the blue-collar hard workers, when he promises, hey, we're not going to tax your tips. I think little things like that, Trump, his view on the economy and things that put money in your pocket, I think that's the thing that makes a lot of us feel a lot better and a lot safer. Now, a lot of folks have been talking today about Hunter Biden, and that was incredible. But let's not forget about the gift of Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi gave us a great gift, or should I say the House Ways and Means Committee dropped the interview. It's been all over the internet. This is a New York Post carrying it. Nancy Pelosi admitting that January 6th was her responsibility. This is Nancy Pelosi in her SUV with a security camera catching her words.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
I take responsibility. That's interesting that she says that, because then at the time she thought a need to start a new committee. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi 2 years ago sounding a little bit shaky.
Last month we passed our legislation for a select committee. The select committee is bipartisan, and it has a quorum, and it will do the job it sets out to do.
So a lot of folks are shocked, and a lot of folks think she was not very forthcoming because there were other people that wanted to be on the committee, like Jim Jordan, and she kept them off the committee. If you remember, she handpicked two very liberal and Trump-hating people, one being Liz Cheney.
Capitol Hill House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is rejecting two of Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's recommendations for the January 6th committee. Republican Representatives Jim Jordan and Jim Banks will not be allowed to serve on the select committee to investigate the riot of Trump supporters who attacked the U.S. Capitol.
So they call it a riot, and they used all the fancy words, but what they can't get away from is Fancy Nancy admitting it's all her fault.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there. And
we did not have any accountability for what was going on there. This was Fancy Nancy.
We should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with? That's a good freaking question there, Captain Obvious.
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
I take responsibility. That's Nancy the Fancy Pelosi. Very interesting. And Donald Trump's response, he calls for the January 6th committee to be investigated and be indicted.
Donald Trump is calling for the criminal prosecution of members of the Congressional January 6th Investigative Committee, all of whom are his political opponents. In a post on Truth Social, the former president wrote, "Indict the unselect J6 committee for illegally deleting and destroying all of their findings." Committee members included Republicans Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, and Democrats Adam Schiff, Jamie Raskin, Benny Thompson, and others. Trump made the post after his former chief strategist Steve Bannon was sentenced to 4 months in prison for defying a subpoena from the committee. Bannon remained defiant after he was handed the sentence Thursday and ordered to surrender by July 1st.
There's not a prison built. There's not a prison built or a jail built that will ever shut me up. All victory to MAGA. We're going to win this. We're going to win at the Supreme Court. And more importantly, we're going to win on November 5th in an amazing landslide.
Trump added in his Truth Social post, "It is a total and complete American tragedy that the crooked Joe Biden Department of Injustice is so desperate to jail Steve Bannon, and every other Republican for that matter, for not submitting to the unselect committee of political thugs."
Well, that he's got a point there. If you for 3 years or more have listened to them falsely accuse you and go after you and yours, I can see why he probably thinks, hey, this is a chance. We need to get this thing right and get some justice going. But we'll see what happens. Donald Trump now getting the good news, if you will, that the Nancy Pelosi is actually coming out and admitting it was her responsibility
here at
for
home,
that.
the nation's largest.
Now, here is an update on the Southern Baptist Convention from the CBN News 700 Club. See what you think.
Well, here at home, the nation's largest Protestant denomination is gathering for its annual convention this week. The Southern Baptists will meet in Indianapolis to consider key issues like abuse reform and the role of women in leadership. CBN's Charlene Aaron has this preview.
This year's theme is One Mind, One Voice, a desire toward unity from Romans chapter 15. It's a timely message as the denomination wrestles with some of the more urgent matters of the day.
Well, Southern Baptists have a strong conviction that pastors of local churches should be men.
A key vote on whether to ban churches with women pastors is expected during the meeting. Nationally syndicated radio host Eric Erickson.
They've considered it before, overwhelming support. There's been a pressure campaign, I think, to get some churches to not support it, but I would not be surprised to see them implement it. And frankly, I think it's a good thing if they do, to provide needed clarity on cooperation within the denomination.
Executive Committee President Dr. Jeff Org argues the SBC is not anti-women, although denominational leaders voted to restrict female pastors last year.
Southern Baptists are not saying no to women in ministry or ministry leadership. They're simply saying that we expect men to lead their homes and we expect men to lead our churches.
One very timely move is an anticipated vote on the question of officially opposing in vitro fertilization. The Alabama Supreme Court sparked controversy in February by ruling frozen embryos created during IVF to be children. Brent Leatherwood, president of the SBC Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, recently called for federal safeguards for the unborn. Writing in a letter to U.S. senators, "We urge legislators to develop and implement a system of federal oversight that protects and informs women and ensures embryos are treated with care, even as we oppose the general practice of IVF." Meanwhile, membership continues to decline, with the SBC losing over 1,200 churches in 2022 alone.
Well, it's always concerning when membership numbers go down, but the membership numbers in our denomination are only one barometer of how we're doing. We're seeing actually increases in the number of baptisms, increases in some areas of giving.
Abuse reform will again be on the agenda. A vote on recommendations from the SBC task force, created in 2022 to help protect survivors of sexual abuse, is also expected.
The next big step for Southern Baptist is finding, if you will, a permanent home within our denominational family of entities for sexual abuse prevention and reform, so that we'll have a place for churches to turn that need help with resourcing, with a hotline, with information about prevention and preventive steps they can take.
Despite the challenges, Org remains optimistic about the overall message and direction many take from the convention.
And bravo on the sexual prevention, because I hate to tell you this, in Southern Baptist world, there's two things they don't preach on, is the Holy Spirit, and they don't preach on sex. That's just a fact, Jack. Very rarely do they talk about the filling of the Holy Spirit, praying in the Spirit. They're so afraid of the Pentecostal movement that's going to get them, and they don't talk about sex. And then we get all mad when the school does. Churches need to step up and talk about this, have a plan of action, help parents with information, because the school's not going to quit talking about sex and transgenderism, homosexuality, and those things. But if you let them do all the talking, your kids then will have nothing else to listen to. Savvy? Something to consider. Well, got a lot going on here. We're wrapping up this last few minutes of the show. We've got so many things that the world wants to try to convict you on and convince you of. But one is the controversy over Facebook. This will be interesting. Facebook loves to police us, especially the closer we get to the election. The other day when I mentioned an article and some fact checks about the NFL and Target and some of them, and how they're backing off on their normal June Pride campaign. I won't mention certain words, it triggers them. They completely shut the whole page down, and the whole computer went blank. So that's Big Brother for you, if you will. But Facebook just might be the reason Trump gets exonerated. Did you know that?
While the New York criminal trial of Donald Trump is over, the controversy is not. The latest revolves around a Facebook user who claimed to be the cousin of a juror who had advanced knowledge of Trump's guilty verdict. Is he actually the cousin of a juror or an internet troll? Is it a serious implication that could result in a mistrial? Or was it all just a bad joke and not even real? Here's what we know. It's this letter from Judge Juan Merchan that sparked the latest buzz. In it, the judge acknowledges the authenticity of a controversial Facebook comment. The letter is from Friday and reads, "Today the court became aware of a comment that was posted on the Unified Court System's public Facebook page and which I now bring to your attention." This is a screenshot shared on social media said to be the original comment, which matches verbatim the comment in the judge's letter. The user, identified as Michael Anderson, states, "My cousin is a juror and says Trump is getting convicted. Thank you, folks, for all your hard work." The judge says the comment was a week old, which means it came before the jury convicted Trump. The comment has since been deleted. While the letter from the judge confirms the comment existed, it does not confirm the content of the comment. While the person who posted it claimed to be related to a juror, according to multiple reports, the same person later posted it was all a joke. This screenshot is said to be Michael Anderson's response to the uproar, telling people to take it easy, and described his comment as intentionally designed to derail discussions or cause the biggest reaction with the least effort. The reaction was big. Several Republicans, including Trump himself, called for a mistrial over the comment, while some legal analysts say there is a relatively small chance the comment has any truth to it. Court officials told the Washington Post the court has a duty to inform all parties of such online content, even if the credibility of the comment's claim is in question.
So there you go. We don't know if this is a for real deal. But it would be hilarious to me if somehow Facebook was used to exonerate Donald Trump with all they do to hinder conservative speech. I just think that would, to me, it would be hilarious. I don't know what you guys think, because, you know, they're always trying so hard to silence, monitor, or put bully tactics on you and saying, hey, if you don't delete this off your page, we're going to take action against you. Trying to see how far you'll go to compromise your convictions and what you know to be true. And I think sometimes you have to say, well, just kick me off your page, my man. You know, I've got to stand for what I believe in. And so that's up to you. The other thing I just thought I'd bring to you is middle class are struggling. And I thought I'd play this report. 2/3 of middle class say they're struggling financially. And this, again, is going to affect the upcoming election.
The economy is a top issue for American voters, and the sentiment from the middle class is it's not doing well, according to the latest polling. About 2/3 of Americans considered middle class say they're facing economic hardship and don't expect that to change for the remainder of their lives. That's people making $60,000 for a family of 4, which is 200% the federal poverty level. But even for higher income Americans, people making more than $150,000 for a family of 4, or 5 times the federal poverty level, 1/4 of these earners say they also worry about paying their bills. Overall, regardless of income level, 60% of respondents say they are financially struggling.
So with that information, that is going to have an impact in the upcoming election. So if you are struggling financially, my heart's with you, and I encourage you, be a tither. Don't forget this. You can't outgive God. Find yourself a local church, get involved, give of your talents, your gifts, but also your resources. You can't outgive the Lord. Just a word of advice. Well, 16-time champion Joey Chestnut is banned from the National Hot Dog Contest. And you're saying, what could this guy do that's so egregious? I thought this was a funny way to end the show. Well, Joey Chestnut, the national hot dog champion, has been banned, even though he's a 6-time champion. Why? He made a deal with rival vegan hot dog brand because they offered to pay him. So since he went with the rival brand for a little money in this tough time economically, as I just played, he's been banned from competition, even though he's the 6-time champion in hot dog eating. Is that not funny? Breaking, 4 Democrats arrested and charged with election fraud in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Maybe we'll bring some more of that tomorrow. And Dr. Ben Carson reveals if President Trump has talked to him about vice president position. I'll tell you one thing about Ben Carson. Not only is he a Christian, a man of integrity, but when they tried the 25th Donald Trump, it wasn't Mike Pence, it was Ben Carson that tipped off Donald Trump that they were trying to set him up with a microphone and make him look like he's insane. Loyalty goes a long way. Thank you, my friends. This is Macil Duncan signing off, and I'll be back tomorrow with the Macil Duncan Radio Show.